Chapter 514. The Tian Huang sword was successfully forged, and it was even Chu Mu's favorite eight-faced Han sword. This made Chu Mu feel joy from the bottom of his heart, and he even had a slight smile on his face. However, when he saw the note on the shop's door, his face immediately turned gloomy. With a flick of his finger, the note instantly turned into dust. The Bao Sword House. Chu Mu's murderous words seeped out from between his teeth. His face returned to its usual calm and cold state, and one could not tell if he was happy, angry, sad, or happy. Only the occasional flash of murderous intent in his eyes was like cold lightning. He did not understand why the people from the Bao Sword House would kidnap his shop's waiter, Fong Lu. The only thing he was sure of was that the reason they kidnapped Fong Lu was to force him to show himself. It was funny to say that he had been staying in the Bao Sword House all this time. Now, he had just left the Bao Sword House's room, and this kind of thing had already happened. What was the purpose of the other party forcing him to show himself? Chu Mu also did not understand. Turning around, he strode towards the Bao Sword House. Not long after, Chu Mu arrived at the first floor of the Bao Sword House. There were many people coming and going at the Bao Sword House. Therefore, even though Chu Mu had just left the Bao Sword House, no one recognized him. "Where is Situfeng?" Chu Mu directly asked the shopkeeper of the first floor of the Bao Sword House. The Bao Sword House was the property of the Situ family in the Tianfeng County. The Situ family was a huge family, and although Chu Mu did not know much about them, he knew that the Situ family had a long history and was not simple. According to the note from before, if he wanted to find a waiter, he had to go to the Bao Sword House to find young Master Situfeng. "Your surname is Chu?" The shopkeeper looked at Chu Mu and asked. Obviously, he had been brief. Chu Mu nodded. His cold expression made the shopkeeper on the first floor a little flustered. He quickly called for a waiter, and asked him to take Chu Mu to find young Master Situ. On the fourth floor of the Bao Sword Tower, the waiter stopped at the stairs. With his status, he was not allowed to go up. Chu Mu stood at the top of the stairs. He could feel a few powerful auras, all of which had reached the origin realm. Then, Chu Mu's sharp senses picked up a very weak aura that was somewhat familiar. Walking up the stairs and appearing on the fourth floor of the Bao Sword Tower, a few gazes landed on Chu Mu. They were not surprised at all. Instead, one of them even had a hint of ridicule and mockery. Chu Mu swept his eyes over the fourth floor. There were a total of 5 people on the fourth floor. His waiter, Fong Lu, was among them. However, it was as if he had been immobilized and was sitting on a chair, not moving at all. Only his eyes were moving around, carrying a bit of anxiety. Among the other 4 people, there was a young swordsman in white who was in his 20s. There were 2 middle-aged swordsmen who looked similar to each other in their 40s. The last person was a woman in her 20s who was dressed like a maid. Chu Mu recognized one of them. It was the Origin Realm swordsman who had caused trouble at his shop before. In the end, he gave away a bottle of Great Recovery Pellet. With Chu Mu's current eyesight, he could tell that the swordsman was at the Origin Realm, Deshang. Both sides didn't say anything as they sized each other up. Chu Mu was able to clearly see the cultivation of the 4 people. Other than the person he saw before who was at the late stage of the Origin Realm, the other middle-aged swordsman was at the peak stage of the Origin Realm, while the servant girl was at the initial stage of the Origin Realm. However, her aura was weak, clearly not due to her hard work. As for the white-clothed young man, he was at the initial stage of the Origin Realm, but his aura was very stable. If the maid were to fight with the young man in white, the young man in white would be able to kill her within a few moves. After all, the difference in foundation between the two was too great. One should have relied on external forces, while the other relied on his own hard work and the accumulation of abundant resources to cultivate. There was a fundamental difference between the two. "Since Master Chu is here, please take a seat." The young man in white waved his hand and smiled. Then, He ordered the middle-aged swordsman beside him, "Go and release that guy." "Yes, master." The middle-aged swordsman in the complete origin realm appeared in front of Fong Lu. He reached out his hand and tapped Fong Lu's body a dozen times. Fong Lu regained his ability to move. Chu Mu could tell that it was a method to cut off meridians. It was somewhat similar to acupuncture points. It was indeed a good method to imprison someone with a lower cultivation. "Master." Fong Lu regained his ability to move. He immediately stood up and walked towards Chu Mu with a face full of shame. "Don't feel burdened. Go back to the shop first." Chu Mu said. "Okay." Fong Lu nodded. He knew that with his cultivation, he would not be of any use even if he stayed. He might even drag Master Chu down. Leaving was the best choice. As soon as Fong Lu left, Chu Mu no longer had any worries. "Master Situ, why are you looking for me?" Chu Mu's tone was very cold. "Master Chu, you are unhappy because we used some tricks to find you." Situ Feng smiled. He had the confidence and calmness of someone who had everything under control. His tone was neither fast nor slow. "We have heard of Master Chu's reputation and have been looking for you for many days. Unfortunately, we have not been able to find you. Master Chu, as you can see, your waiter was not harmed at all. I believe Master Chu also understands my sincerity." His tone was somewhat haughty. "Tell me why you are looking for me." Chu Mu was a little disgusted by his attitude. "Master Chu, there is no need to rush." Situ Feng maintained his smile and said, "I am the second master of the Situ family. This time, I have been ordered to come to the Sword Treasure House in the Tianfeng County to make some achievements. Therefore, I need to recruit talent. I have seen Master Chu's supreme rank sword, and it is indeed a top-notch supreme rank sword. It is not inferior to the supreme rank swords made by some master swordsmith." Chu Mu did not say anything, but he already understood the other party's meaning. They were trying to recruit him. With a little guess, he could roughly guess what this Situ Feng meant. He was sent out by the family to gain experience, possibly to become the next patriarch. Before that, he needed to make some achievement. Naturally, he would need the help of various talent. My Situ family has a history of more than 5,000 years. We have a deep foundation and specialize in sword forging. In the whole family there are many master swordsmiths. In the main family there is even a master swordsmithing master. Situ Feng continued, "Master Chu is so young, yet he is able to forge top-notch supreme rank swords. In the future, becoming a master swordsman is not a problem. As long as Master Chu joins the Sword Treasure House and becomes a professional swordsmith, I, Situ Feng, guarantee that Master Chu will receive the treatment of a master swordsman. Moreover, Master Chu will have the right to read the swordsmithing experiences of Master Swordsmith. In the future, if there is a chance, I also guarantee that Master Chu will receive guidance from a master swordsman." It had to be said that Situ Feng's offer was very generous. If Chu Mu was only a true master swordsmith, and the kind of person who was determined to go further on the path of swordsmithing, he would definitely be very tempted. He would not hesitate to accept Situ Feng's offer. A master would enjoy the treatment of a master swordsman. He would be able to read the swordsmithing experiences of a master swordsman, and even have the chance to receive guidance from a master swordsman. Since ancient times, how many master swordsmiths were unable to become master swordsmiths? And how many master swordsmiths were unable to become master swordsmiths? The path of swordsmithing was just like the path of the sword. Everyone wanted to reach the end, but not everyone could reach the end. After Situ Feng finished speaking, he calmly stared at Chu Mu with a smile on his face. In his opinion, Chu Mu's acceptance was inevitable, and he would even be overjoyed. The Sword Treasure House. As long as one was a swordsmith, who would not know about the Sword Treasure House? Unless one was from a remote corner of the world. One had to know that many swordsmiths would break their heads to become a professional swordsmith of the Sword Treasure House. It was a kind of opportunity. If that's all you want to say, then I'm not interested. Chu Mu decisively rejected and stood up. Don't bother me again. My time is very precious. After he finished speaking, Chu Mu walked towards the stairs. The smile on Sidu Feng's face suddenly froze, and his face was filled with shock. The other three were the same. This was too different from what they had imagined, and they could not react for a while. Seeing Chu Mu walk to the stairs, everyone finally reacted. The middle-aged Origin Realm swordsman named Deshang suddenly snorted angrily. His body flashed and jumped in front of Chu Mu, blocking his path. The other middle-aged swordsman also stared at Chu Mu with a pair of clear eyes, one hand holding the hilt of his sword. You can't recruit me, so you want to force me? Chu Mu was not afraid at all. Instead, he glanced at Sidu Feng and said with a faint smile. His tone was filled with disdain. Even if they really wanted to fight, he was not afraid at all. Perhaps he might not be a match for these people, but if Chu Mu really wanted to leave, they might not be able to stop him either. If they really pissed off Chu Mu, he could just release the meteor sword Yuan and kill them all. Let him go. Sidu Feng frowned and waved his hand. The Origin Realm Deshang swordsman glanced at Chu Mu fiercely and unwillingly moved aside. Chu Mu did not say a word. He withdrew his gaze and walked down the stairs. He walked to the first floor and left the sword treasure house. Master, why are you letting this person go? The maid asked. I can't see through him. Sidu Feng frowned again and said. In his eyes, Chu Mu looked very strange. He could not see through him at all. Chi-Hai Realm? No, Origin Realm? That's not true either. Could it be the 9th Transformation Realm? This was because only ordinary people and 9th Transformation Realm swordsmen would not have any sword energy fluctuations. Ordinary people did not cultivate, so how could there be sword energy fluctuations? As for 9th Transformation Realm swordsmen, it was because all the sword energy was sealed within their bodies. As long as they did not use it, there would not be sword energy fluctuations. This situation was very strange. Sidu Feng also denied the idea that Chu Mu was a 9th Transformation Realm swordsman. After all, which 9th Transformation Realm swordsman would dare to appear in public like this? After all, even with the Sidu family's ability, they would not know about the ancient matters. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 5:15. In a flash, 3 months had passed. Young master, I've found it. I've finally found it. The sword guard of Deshang hurriedly ran up to the 4th floor of the House of Treasured Sword. Speak. The eyes of Sidu Feng, who was holding a book, flashed. He immediately put the book to the side and said, Don't worry. This Master Chu's real name is Chu Mu. The middle-aged sword guard handed a piece of paper to Sidu Feng. Sidu Feng took it and quickly read through it. The Sidu family had 5,000 years of history. Among all the families in the central main sword domain, this was one of the most profound families. However, compared to the entire central main sword domain, the Sidu family was actually not that powerful, especially when compared to some of the stronger sections. Apart from the top 10 sword sects, there were many other sects that were stronger than the Sidu family. Due to the limitations of their strength, their ability to gather information was naturally limited as well. Furthermore, Sidu Feng was not the head of the Sidu family, so he could only use a portion of his authority. It took him a full 3 months to find Master Chu's information. If Chu Mu was here to see the contents of the paper, he would definitely be shocked. Gentian sword hero Chu Mu from the Eastern Sword Domain. He reached the 32nd floor of the Heavenly Sword Tower and is ranked first on the Heavenly Sword Hero ranking. No one can shake his position. Sidu Feng repeated the important information on the paper. His eyes were reserved and his face was cold. No one knew what he was thinking. Are you sure the information on this paper is accurate? After a while, Sidu Feng looked at the middle-aged sword guard and asked coldly. I've checked it repeatedly and I'm very sure. The middle-aged sword guard spoke with absolute certainty. Shortly after, he revealed a doubtful expression. This Chu Mu reached the 32nd level of the Heavenly Sword Tower more than a year ago and was ranked first on the Heavenly Sword ranking. No one could shake his position. At that time, he should have accumulated to the limit. Now, he should be at the 9th transformation realm and should be in seclusion to pass the 9th transformation realm. This was not only the middle-aged sword guard's doubt, but also Situ Feng's doubt. Based on their many years of experience, once one broke through to the 9th transformation realm, one would have to find a secluded place to go into seclusion. Only after passing the 9th transformation realm and reaching the origin realm would one appear again. However, Chu Mu made them feel extremely puzzled. Could it be that the current Chu Mu had yet to break through to the 9th transformation realm? To be honest, this possibility was extremely small. After all, Chu Mu had already reached the 32nd floor of the Heavenly Sword Tower more than a year ago. Besides him, the 2nd-ranked Zhong Qintian, the 3rd-ranked Zhu Wudao, and the 4th-ranked Yen Jiyo had also reached the 32nd floor. However, they had only just entered the 32nd floor and were defeated in less than 60 breaths of time. That was why Chu Mu had been able to dominate the Heavenly Sword hero role for over a year, and no one had been able to shake his position. If that kind of result was not his best, then wouldn't it be too shocking? Suddenly, Situ Feng's eyes widened and a terrifying light shot out. He thought of a possibility, and this possibility made his heart beat wildly. Where is Chu Mu now? Situ Feng stood up and hurriedly asked. He left the Tianfeng province a month ago and entered the Windy Fire Desert. I don't know where he went, the middle-aged sword guard hurriedly replied. The Windy Fire Desert. Situ Feng also felt a headache. The Windy Fire Desert was too large, dozens of times larger than the Tianfeng province. It was also very dangerous, and it was extremely difficult to find a person in it. Young master, according to my calculations, the ancient sword tomb in the Windy Fire Desert should be opening soon. At that time, many people will definitely rush over. I think that Chu Mu will definitely go as well. The middle-aged sword guard thought hard for a while, then clapped his hands and said, The ancient sword tomb opening. Situ Feng walked to the window with his hands behind his back and looked at the sky outside. He muttered to himself, if this Chu Mu is currently at the 9th transformation realm, then he must have some backup plan that allowed him to appear outside. Perhaps there is some secret behind it. If I can obtain this secret, perhaps it will increase my chances of competing for the position of patriarch. The Windy Fire Desert was a famous forbidden area in the central main sword region. Within the Windy Fire Desert, the temperature was extremely high. From time to time, there would be strong winds and sand blowing. Even Qi Transformation Realm swordsmen would feel unbearably hot. Even Qi Sea Realm swordsmen would feel thirsty. The moisture in their bodies would quickly evaporate, and their sword Qi would be affected as well, becoming harder to control than usual. Throughout the year, the astral winds and earth fire would wreak havoc. Once they encountered the astral winds, Qi Transformation Realm swordsmen would disappear within 10 breaths of time. Even Qi Sea Realm swordsmen would only be able to hold on for a little longer. They would have to leave the area of the astral winds as soon as possible, or else they would also end up being eroded. As for the earth fire, it was even more terrifying. Once Qi Sea Realm swordsmen encountered the earth fire, they would instantly turn into ashes. Even original realm swordsmen would suffer great injuries. Moreover, the earth fire in the Windy Fire Desert had another characteristic. Once it came into contact with a human body, it would continue to burn. From a small spark, it would become a prairie fire. Normal methods would not be able to extinguish it. Within the Windy Fire Desert, there were no demonic beasts. There were only sand beasts, one of the strange beasts. Only sand beasts could survive in the Windy Fire Desert. Could be said that there were all sorts of strange things in this world. At this moment, in the outskirts of the windy fire desert, in a rather remote area, there was a huge rock that had been eroded into a natural cave by countless sandstorms. On the dry ground, there was a figure sitting cross-legged. The entrance of the cave was sealed by a sword chi, preventing the strong wind and sand from blowing into the cave. Thus, it was unable to affect the person inside the cave. This person was Chu Mu, who had left the Tianfeng region a month ago. A month ago, Chu Mu had already reached the 9th revolution of the 9 transformation realm. Now that he had accumulated enough, he planned to break through the 9 transformation realm and enter the original realm. At this moment, Chu Mu was cultivating the 3rd section of the Heavenly Baron's Sword Chi Manual, Yuan Condensation Section. The purpose of the Yuan Condensation Section was to condense the Heavenly Baron's Sword Chi after the 9 transformation realm. After 10 times of compression and condensation, there would be a qualitative change, forming an even more powerful Sword Yuan. The difference between Sword Yuan and Sword Chi was huge, at least 10 times. In other words, the power released by one portion of Sword Yuan was at least comparable to 10 portions of Sword Chi, or even more. One could imagine that with Chu Mu's strength, once he broke through to the original realm, it would be extremely shocking. A month ago, Chu Mu had dismissed Fong Lu because he no longer planned to continue operating the sword forging shop. Before Chu Mu left, he gave Fong Lu some spiritual stones and some sword arts to end their relationship. Because when he broke through to the original realm, there would be a lot of commotion. People would definitely guess that he was in the 9 transformation realm before, which might cause some unnecessary trouble. Without a doubt, the windy fire desert was a very suitable place for breaking through. Although there were many swordsmen who entered the windy fire desert, the area was huge. If one wanted to hide, it would not be easy for others to find him. Moreover, even if the commotion caused by breaking through was noticed, it would not cause as much trouble as breaking through in the Tianfeng province. The sword chi at the entrance of the cave was laid down by the Azura sword of Gojoseon. Even if the people of the sword of Gojoseon found this place, they would not be able to enter. If they tried to force their way in, they would be killed by the counterattack. Sitting cross-legged in the cave, Chu Mu closed his eyes and circulated the Yuan Condensation Section over and over again. The Yuan Condensation Section focused more on one's spiritual will. Using one's spiritual will to drive, it would further compress and condense the 1st transformation realm Sword Chi into Sword Yuan. Chu Mu's soul was very powerful. Naturally, his spiritual will was stronger than the average swordsman, and the efficiency of condensing Sword Chi was also higher. Now, Chu Mu had reached the final moment. The 9 transformation Heavenly Baron's Sword Chi in his body had been condensed to the extreme and was beginning to liquefy. Sword Chi existed in the form of a gas, while Sword Yuan existed in the form of a liquid. The change in form meant an increase in quality. Every time he circulated the Yuan Condensation Section, the 9 transformation realm Sword Chi would further refine his powerful body, causing the strength of his body to increase once again. In other words, other than the Heavenly Baron's Sword Chi that was about to condense into Sword Yuan, Chu Mu's Heavenly Baron's Sword Physique was about to break through to the 2nd level. Although the Azura sword of Gojoseon did not appear, his mind was able to cover the outside world. Everything about Chu Mu was clearly within his mind. Breaking through to the origin realm in less than a year and a half. Such a speed is truly shocking. Unfortunately, such a person cannot become my disciple, the Azura sword of Gojoseon sighed to himself. I wonder how far he will go in the future? Sword Saint? Or challenge the legendary Sword God? Chu Mu's mind was highly concentrated, not daring to be distracted in the slightest. He circulated the Yuan Condensation Section again and again, refining the 9 transformation realm Sword Chi in his body bit by bit. Gradually, the gaseous Heavenly Baron's sword physique in his body began to change, as if it was about to turn into a liquid, condensing like water vapor. The rumbling sound was like thunder, rumbling within his meridians. The purity of the 9 transformation realm sword chi was much higher than ordinary 9 transformation realm sword chi. When it was circulated, the burden on his meridians was even more obvious. If not for the fact that Chu Mu had already mastered the first level of the Heavenly Baron sword physique and was about to break through to the second level, he would not have been able to withstand such an impact. Under Chu Mu's continuous compression, the first drop of sword yuan finally appeared. Like a drop of water, it flowed along his meridians and fell into his dantian, floating up and down in his dantian. This was a good start. Following that, the second drop of sword yuan was formed. The third drop, the fourth drop, the fifth drop, drop after drop of Heavenly Baron sword yuan was condensed by Chu Mu. Chu Mu's mind and willpower were also rapidly depleted, and his face gradually turned pale. This was an unstoppable breakthrough. Chu Mu had to persevere until all of the Heavenly Baron sword chi was condensed into Heavenly Baron sword yuan. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 5:16. A drop of water becomes a river, and hundreds of rivers flow into the sea. The last ball of Sky Baron Sword Chi was condensed into Sky Baron Sword energy under Chu Mu's powerful intent. Within his dantian, a small pool appeared. The lake was golden in color, like a desert under the sun. The last drop of sword energy flowed along his meridians and finally dripped into the lake. A ding-dong sound was heard and layers of ripples spread out. All of the Sky Baron Sword Chi had been refined into Sky Baron Sword energy. The powerful sword energy had condensed into a lake within Chu Mu's dantian. It contained an unparalleled power. Once it was released, it would instantly turn Chu Mu into nothingness. Even the surrounding 10,000 meters would be bombarded by the terrifying energy. It was a power that could instantly shatter a Chi High Realm sword warrior. When the last drop of sword energy fell into his dantian, Chu Mu's mental intent suddenly entered a strange state. Under this state, his essence, chi, and soul continued to rise, breaking through the limits and reaching new heights. Everything in the surroundings was under his control. In the outside world, the heaven and earth Ling Chi continued to vibrate, gathering above the cave where Chu Mu was training. Countless strong winds blew from afar, scorching hot. As they gathered, a 10,000-meter wide whirlpool appeared, and it was still expanding. Heaven and earth anomaly. Such a strong heaven and earth Ling Chi movement. Could it be that some kind of treasure is about to appear? No, this should be a heaven and earth anomaly when a sword warrior breaks through from the 9th transformation realm to the origin realm. Breaking through to the origin realm? But this movement is too big. Look at the heaven and earth Ling Chi whirlpool. It has already reached 100,000 meters in size, and it is still expanding. This is too unbelievable. When a normal swordsman breaks through to the origin realm, there will only be a 10,000-meter wide heaven and earth Ling Chi vortex. Who is this person? He must be a genius, a true genius, for him to be able to trigger a whirlpool of heaven and earth spiritual chi within a radius of at least 100,000 meters. That's strange. Why isn't the heaven and earth spiritual chi vortex gushing downwards like other people's breakthroughs? Only strands of yellowish-brown gas are falling down. Breaking through to the origin realm and possessing the heaven and earth spiritual chi within 100,000-meter radius, could it be Chu Mu? A middle-aged swordsman's eyes flashed. He raised his head and looked at the huge vortex of heaven and earth spiritual chi in the distant sky. His body moved, and he turned into a stream of light and quickly flew over. The swordsmen who were in the Windfire Desert and saw the phenomenon of Chu Mu breaking through to the origin realm did not know that what Chu Mu cultivated was the Sky Desolation sword scripture. What he absorbed was desolation chi and not spiritual chi. Normally, when a swordsman broke through, the heaven and earth spiritual chi vortex would flow downwards and be absorbed by the swordsman, turning into sword energy. After all, the amount of sword energy condensed into sword energy was at most 1/10 of the original amount. This amount of sword energy could not even reach the entry level of the origin realm. Therefore, it was urgent to refine a large amount of heaven and earth spiritual chi and turn it into sword energy. Because the quality of sword energy was too high, it usually required a large amount of heaven and earth spiritual chi and a long period of time to complete and truly enter the entry level of the origin realm. However, Chu Mu cultivated the sky desolation sword chi and absorbed desolation chi. Within the wind-fire desert, because of the existence of endless yellow sand, there was also desolation chi. However, compared to spiritual chi, it was not even 1/10 of desolation chi. The desolation chi was yellowish-brown, and normal people would not be able to recognize it. Therefore, the swordsmen were puzzled. Strands of desolation chi flowed down from the heaven and earth spiritual chi vortex, passing through the cave and entering Chu Mu's body. He used the method recorded in the Sky Desolation Sword Manual to condense it and turn it into Sky Desolation Sword energy. It dripped into his dantian, causing the small pond in his dantian to expand bit by bit. This was a spontaneous process that did not require Chu Mu to control. His mind was immersed in this strange state, and all kinds of realizations appeared one after another like a river. Sword intent. Ripping profound. Illusory profound. Water profound. Fire profound. On Chu Mu's body, there was first a shocking sharpness that seemed to pierce through the clouds. Soon, it turned into a sharpness that could tear everything apart. Following that, it turned into an illusory aura that was difficult to distinguish between real and fake. It was like clouds and mist. With another flash, it was like an endless stream of water. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a raging fire that seemed to want to burn everything down. Increase, increase, and increase again. Originally, Chu Mu's sword intent had reached 41%. But now, in this indescribable and unique state, his sword intent started to increase at an unimaginable speed. 42%. 43%. 44%. 45%. After Chu Mu's sword intent rapidly increased to 45%, it suddenly paused and felt like it could no longer rapidly increase. Subconsciously, Chu Mu immediately changed his target and started comprehending ripping profound. Such an opportunity was hard to come by, and he could not waste it on a sword intent that could not be increased quickly. The 20% ripping profound began to increase. Compared to 41% sword intent, the comprehension speed of 20% lacerating profound was much faster. Not long after, it reached 30%. Unable to increase it any further, Chu Mu immediately shifted his attention to illusionary profound. After a while, the 20% ripping profound also increased to 30%. Since it could not be increased quickly, Chu Mu changed his target again to the water profound. The water profound was at 10%. Under this state, it increased to 20%. Soon after, the fire profound also increased from 10% to 20%. Just when Chu Mu wanted to increase the other mentalities to the profound level, he suddenly realized that the state had disappeared. Currently, Chu Mu had grasped 4 types of profounds. 2 of them were even high-rank mutated profounds. Even if he had reached the peak of his other realms, even if he had reached the origin realm, it wouldn't be easy for him to grasp the 5th type of profound. The more profound one had, the harder it would be to comprehend. Sometimes it was better to bite off more than one could chew. Since he had escaped from this state, Chu Mu did not force it. From the looks of it, 4 profound was enough. In the sky above the cave, the heaven and earth spiritual chi vortex that spanned over 100,000 meters started to dissipate. The sky desolate sword yuan in Chu Mu's dantian had not been fully replenished. In other words, he had only just entered the origin realm, and had not reached the entry realm. Of course, the strength of the sword yuan was not any weaker than the entry realm. It was just that the amount of sword yuan had not reached the entry realm. The sword intent had reached 45%, the ripping profound had reached 30%, the ripping profound had reached 30%, the ripping profound had reached 30%, the water profound had reached 20%, and the fire profound had reached 20%. This was Chu Mu's current strength. Just from the data alone, Chu Mu had already surpassed many normal entry realm origin realm swordsmen. Even some normal Deshang and perfection realm swordsmen could not compare to Chu Mu. However, Chu Mu's true competition was the geniuses, the true geniuses. Since they were geniuses, they were naturally different from normal people. Their true strength could not be determined by their cultivation base. This was because a swordsman's strength was composed of many aspects. Although there was an obvious difference in cultivation base, it was not the only difference. After all, the origin realm was different from the Qi High realm. In the Qi High realm, the difference in cultivation base was not very obvious. But in the origin realm, the difference between entry realm and minor completion and Deshang and perfection realm would be magnified by a few times. If there was not much difference in the sword intent profound, then cultivation base would be the deciding factor. Although Chu Mu was clear about his current cultivation and comprehension level of sword intent profound, he wasn't sure how strong he was right now. That was because he had just broken through to the origin realm, so there was nothing to compare with. There were many aspects to a swordsman's strength, and it was difficult to make an accurate judgment. Although he had broken through, Chu Mu did not leave immediately. Instead, he began to comprehend the sword skill. The original sword skill only had sword intent and no sword essence. It could only be replaced by the power of conception and sword qi. It was an incomplete sword skill. But now, the sword qi had condensed into sword essence, and the conception had been upgraded to profound. It was time to perfect the sword skill. Beheading moon, beheading iron, beheading strike. Not only that, Chu Mu also planned to create a new sword skill that would combine the profound of water and profound of fire. When the time came, its power would definitely be stronger than beheading moon. Chu Mu had comprehended beheading moon countless times before. At that time, it was only because he did not have sword essence and profound. But now, with sword essence and profound, Chu Mu had perfected beheading moon to a perfect level in just a few moments. The only thing that Chu Mu felt was a pity was that beheading moon had its limitations. It could only carry 39% sword intent at most. This was something that could not be changed. Instead of spending a lot of time to change it, it would be better to create a new sword skill. Now, Chu Mu really wanted to find someone to test the power of beheading moon. Suppressing this impulse, Chu Mu continued to comprehend how to combine the profound of water and profound of fire, two completely opposite profound of fire. Although the water profound and the fire profound were just ordinary profound, because of their opposite attributes, it was several times more difficult to fuse them than the water profound and the metal profound. However, once the fusion was successful, the power that could be unleashed would be at least twice as powerful as the fusion of the water profound and the metal profound. As long as he could successfully combine the profound of water and profound of fire and create a sword skill that was even more powerful than beheading moon, Chu Mu's strength would definitely increase by a lot. Time passed slowly. After a while, the profound of water and profound of fire still could not be combined. The difficulty was too high. If he forced it, it would probably explode instantly, leaving him with nothing left. Forget it. The opportunity is not there yet, so I can't force it. Chu Mu shook his head and gave up on the fusion of the profound of water and profound of fire. In this aspect, the Azura sword of Gojoseon could not help him because the Azura sword of Gojoseon did not have the profound of water and profound of fire. Getting up, the Azura sword of Gojoseon broke the sword chi seal around the cave. Chu Mu strode out, and the wind and clouds in the sky changed. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidien. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 5:17. After reaching the origin realm, Chu Mu's perception had increased tenfold. He closed his eyes and with a thought, his mental power instantly radiated out from his mental world, covering an area of 1,000 meters. Everything was clearly displayed in Chu Mu's perception. Just as Chu Mu's mental world had expanded by a few times, a vast expanse of yellow sand appeared. If one were to look closely, they would discover that it was actually Chu Mu's mental power radiating out, covering an area of 1,000 meters. Whether it was sand or rocks, everything was clearly visible. Even the dust particles floating in the air could be clearly felt by Chu Mu. This wonderful feeling was like a fish returning to the sea, swimming freely. The origin realm was not only about condensing sword chi into sword energy, but also expanding one's mental world to the point of being able to release mental power. Ordinary origin realm swordsmen could release their mental power to a range of 100 meters. As their cultivation increased, their mental power would slowly increase, and the range would increase as well. However, even a complete origin realm swordsman could only release their mental power to a range of 500 meters. Of course, this only applied to ordinary origin realm swordsmen. Those who were born with powerful mental power, possessed techniques to refine mental power, or had some fortuitous encounter to greatly increase their mental power were not included. However, people like Chu Mu, who could release their mental power to a range of 1,000 meters upon reaching the origin realm, were extremely rare. One could imagine that as Chu Mu's cultivation increased, the range of his mental power would increase as well. At this moment, a powerful sword pressure rolled over from afar. It descended from the sky and blasted towards Chu Mu. The yellow sand around Chu Mu seemed to be swept away by an invisible hand and was blown away. Origin realm. Chu Mu retracted his mental power and raised his head to look at the source of the sword pressure. He saw a figure flying over, appearing in the sky and looking down at him. With a thought, Chu Mu's body floated into the air and shot up into the sky like an arrow. He didn't use any flying secret technique. Astral realm swordsmen already possessed the ability to fly. Because of their powerful spiritual energy and sword origin, they were able to escape the gravitational pull of the ground. Although it was his first time flying in the origin realm, Chu Mu didn't face any difficulty at all. He stably faced the swordsman from a few hundred meters above the ground. Chu Mu, it is indeed you. A cold smile appeared on the other party's face. Chu Mu didn't say anything because he clearly saw who the other party was. It was one of Situ Feng's 2 sword guards, the origin realm sword guard named Deshang. You were indeed in the 9th transformation realm. You didn't find a secluded place to enter seclusion and instead appeared outside. The man continued talking with a cold smile on his face, as if he had everything under his control. He was similar to Situfeng. Shocking, this is truly shocking. You actually used less than a year and a half to pass the 9th transformation realm and break through to the origin realm. There must be a shocking secret behind this. Chu Mu still didn't say anything. He didn't even show any special expression. Tell me, if I were to announce this news, what kind of commotion would it cause? The middle-aged swordsman smiled proudly. Tell me your goal. Chu Mu finally opened his mouth and said indifferently. Ha ha. My goal is simple. As long as you follow me back to see the young master and agree to work for him, I will keep this news to myself. The middle-aged swordsman smiled. Of course, I believe that a genius like you has extraordinary strength. Even so, you don't have the strength to kill me. Once you do, I will immediately leave and spread the news. At that time, even the top 10 sword sects will be interested. A threat, a naked threat. Chu Mu could tell from the other person's tone that he wasn't joking and was serious. As long as Chu Mu didn't do as the other person said, he would definitely announce this news. At that time, regardless of whether the news was true or false, it would definitely cause a storm. And the center of the storm would be Chu Mu. At that time, he would be in endless trouble. Take a guess. Between the trouble that hasn't come yet and the threat that threatens me, which one would I choose? Chu Mu suddenly smiled and asked. It seems that you don't intend to cooperate. The middle-aged swordsman's expression turned cold. He instantly drew his sword and slashed out. In an instant, a fiery red sword light appeared. It was incomparably huge, as if it could cut through the sky. Immediately after, the middle-aged swordsman turned around and exploded with a terrifying sword origin wave. With a boom, the air shook as he turned into a ray of light and flew away. He wasn't stupid. He probably knew that with his current strength, if he wanted to kill a genius swordsman like Chu Mu, even if there was a huge gap between their cultivation bases, the success rate wasn't very high. After all, geniuses were geniuses because they often had trump cards that others didn't have. Moon slashing. Chu Mu's figure flashed and dodged the huge fiery red sword light. With a low roar, Chu Mu held the eight-sided desolation sword in his hand and slashed out. The sword origin was the bone, the sword will was the soul, and the ultimacy was the flesh. In an instant, the perfect moon slashing tore through the sky. A 10-meter-long dark golden crescent moon tore through the sky at lightning speed. It locked onto the Origin Realm swordsman Deshang and approached him at a speed 10 times faster than his own. The middle-aged swordsman's body trembled. He turned around and his face turned pale. He was scared out of his wits. The aura emitted by Chu Mu's perfect moon slashing was too powerful. 39% sword will and 30% ultimacy were perfectly combined with the Desolation sword origin. Furthermore, the 8-sided Desolation sword was a top-notch royal-grade sword. Due to its special properties, the Desolation sword origin had an obvious amplification effect. The Origin Realm swordsman Deshang's sword will had reached 40%, and his fire ultimacy had reached 50%. In addition to his powerful sword origin, he could have blocked Chu Mu's attack and not died if he had used all his strength. However, Chu Mu's attack was beyond his expectations. The speed of the moon slashing was unbelievably fast. Once again, it exceeded his expectations. By the time he reacted and mobilized the sword origin in his body, preparing to release a sword technique, the moon slashing had already arrived. It instantly tore apart his protective sword aura and his precious armor. With a ripping sound, as if a long blade had cut through flesh, the Origin Realm swordsman Deshang's body was split into 2 halves. Blood rained down like rain. Chu Mu's 39% sword will was comparable to a 49% sword will without a sword soul. The 30% ultimacy was comparable to a 60% ultimacy. As for sword origin, the Desolation sword origin was more condensed than ordinary sword origin. With the amplification of the 8-sided Desolation sword, it was at least 50% stronger. With such a powerful moon slashing, even if the opponent tried his best to block it, he would most likely be injured. Although the Origin Realm swordsman Deshang did not use his full strength to block it, Chu Mu was able to roughly test the power of the moon slashing. Chu Mu's figure flashed and he quickly landed on the ground. He picked up the royal rank sword and spatial bracer from the corpse that had fallen on the yellow sand. A flame appeared under Chu Mu's control and burned the corpse into ashes. Apart from this person, Situ Feng should also be suspicious of me. His other sword guard and maid might also know something. This is a potential problem, so I must get rid of it. Chu Mu glanced at the ashes of the corpse that was swallowed by the yellow sand and thought to himself. Traces of light flickered in his eyes. Between the trouble that had yet to come and the threat of giving in, Chu Mu was unwilling to choose. However, if he was forced to make a choice, Chu Mu would rather be in trouble than be threatened. This was his principle and his path. The sword's sovereign realm requires at least 70% sword intent. Although there is no requirement for cultivation, those who can comprehend 70% sword intent should be able to reach the Origin realm. Deshang's cultivation should be able to reach the perfection realm. Coupled with the increase in other profoundness, his strength should be extremely terrifying. The current me is still unable to compete with a sword sovereign realm swordsman. I wonder if senior brother Xiao has broken through to the origin realm? Even if senior brother Xiao has broken through to the origin realm, we would still not be a match for a sword sovereign under normal circumstances. The sky-burying sword sex Venerable Zhang Tian has the strength of a sword sovereign. Even the most ordinary sword sovereign's strength is above ours. If that's the case, I will wait a little longer and increase my cultivation before seeking revenge. The ancient sword tomb is about to open. There might be great opportunities inside. After staying in the Tianfeng prefecture for more than a year, Chu Mu was not oblivious to the outside world. He had gathered quite a bit of information. The Windfire Desert was a place where swordsmen trained and earned spiritual stones. It was the most suitable place for Origin Realm swordsmen. Within the Windfire Desert, there was an ancient sword tomb called the Ancient Sword Tomb. The Ancient Sword Tomb had existed for a very long time. Its exact origins were unknown. All that was known was that there were many opportunities within the Ancient Sword Tomb. One could even obtain the Sword Dao inheritance within. Of course, opportunities often coexisted with danger. The Ancient Sword Tomb contained countless dangers. One could die within if one was not careful. The Ancient Sword Tomb appeared once every 30 years. Each time, it would appear at a different location. Therefore, no one knew where the Ancient Sword Tomb would appear this time. The only thing that was certain was that the Ancient Sword Tomb would still appear in the Windfire Desert. As for the exact location, only when the signs of the Ancient Sword Tomb appeared would they know. If the time is correct, the Ancient Sword Tomb will appear in another day. Chu Mu flew above the Windfire Desert. He wanted to see what the sand beasts of the Windfire Desert looked like. At the same time, a large number of swordsmen rushed into the Windfire Desert. Their goal was naturally the ancient sword tomb that was about to appear. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 518. After rushing back, I got sick, weak, and had a stomachache. But don't worry, the Dominator of 6 realms will not stop updating. Kill! The 8-sided desolate sky swords pierced out. The sharp power instantly penetrated the sand beast's surface and directly hit the sand core. With a pop, the hard sand core shattered under the impact of the laceration ultimacy, mountain quaking energy, and sword intent. The sand beast, which was known to have an immortal body, exploded into yellow sand that filled the sky. It spread out in all directions like a sand rain. The sand beast was a type of exotic beast. Its body was made of sand and was constantly flowing. It could greatly weaken an attack. Moreover, even if it was scattered, as long as the sand core was not broken, it could instantly reform. It was known as an immortal body. The sand core of the sand beast could move freely in its body. In other words, it was very difficult to break the sand core through the surface of the sand. The normal method that swordsmen used to deal with sand beasts was to use powerful sword skills to disperse the sand beast. Then, they would destroy the sand core before it could reform into a new body. However, it was not easy. It required extraordinary eyesight, incomparably fast attack speed, and a sufficiently powerful attack. Only by combining the three could one destroy the sand core and truly kill the sand beast. However, very few swordsmen would destroy the sand cores because each sand core was very valuable. They would often join forces to destroy the sand beasts and then immediately use their methods to capture the sand cores. They would then use their sword chi and other powers to temporarily seal the sand cores and bring them back to Cell. This was also the reason why many swordsmen entered the fiery wind desert. Of course, there were also some swordsmen who entered to gain experience. They would fight the sand beasts and resist the harsh environment of the fiery wind desert to improve themselves. Suddenly, there was a loud rumble. Formless sound waves spread out, turning into huge waves that rolled out. The sand in the windy fire desert was immediately swept up, turning into golden waves that surged over. With the protective sword aura around his body, Chu Mu faced the 100-meter-tall golden wave and soared into the sky. He appeared 1,000 meters above the fiery wind desert and looked in the direction of the rumbling sound. Subsequently, the wind-fired desert began to tremble. Boom, 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 boom. An astonishing whistling sound could be heard. Golden astral winds seemed to be blowing from outer space. They whistled and seemed to be everywhere. When they blew past Chu Mu's protective sword aura began to fluctuate. It felt as if it was about to be blown away. Chu Mu had no choice but to increase the output of the heavenly wasteland sword essence to forcefully stabilize the protective sword aura. The astral winds were very frightening. Without protection, Chu Mu could not guarantee how long he would be able to withstand the onslaught of the astral winds, even with the second level of the heavenly wasteland sword body. In the next breath, there was a bang. The yellow sand below him exploded. A scarlet flame shot out like a fountain, reaching 100 meters in the air. An extremely high temperature spread out, causing the surrounding temperature to rise by 10 times. It was unbearably hot. Earth fire. The temperature of the earth fire was too high. It was not inferior to the azure steel fire required to forge a royal-grade sword. Moreover, it was even more violent than the azure steel fire. Once a true realm swordsman came in contact with it, they would die on the spot. Even Chu Mu did not want to test the fire with his own body. Fortunately, he was 1,000 meters above the fiery wind desert. No matter how powerful the earth fire was, it would not be able to reach him. This commotion should be caused by the appearance of the ancient sword tomb. Chu Mu thought to himself as he turned into a stream of light and flew away at lightning speed. At the same time, there were many figures flying in the sky above the fiery wind desert. Some were alone, some were in groups of 2 or 3, and some were in groups of 5 or 6. There was even a swordsman with a pair of sword chi wings on his back. He was obviously a chi high swordsman. However, there were many true realm swordsmen protecting him. It was obvious that he was not from an ordinary background. From afar, Chu Mu could see that there was a ring of darkness in the fiery wind desert. It was as if an ancient beast had its mouth wide open, waiting to devour all living things. When Chu Mu arrived, there were already hundreds of true realm swordsmen present. They were either alone or in groups. Every one of them had an astonished look on their faces. Looking at the ancient and huge entrance, they could not help but feel small. Chu Mu also raised his head to look at the entrance. It was pitch black like a black hole, emitting an indescribable aura that made one tremble in fear. It was extremely mysterious. The entire entrance was 100 meters tall, like a small black hill standing in the fiery wind desert. This pitch-black entrance was the only entrance to the ancient sword tomb. If one wanted to enter the ancient sword tomb, they would have to walk through this terrifying entrance. Although there was no danger in walking through this entrance, the aura made one tremble in fear. Those who were not brave enough would not even dare to walk in. The ancient sword tomb has a total of 3 levels. Each level is more dangerous than the last, but at the same time, the rewards from each level are greater than the last. The first level is suitable for the Chi High realm, the second for the 9th transformation realm, and the third for the True realm. Information about the ancient sword tomb appeared in Chu Mu's mind. Although the second level of the ancient sword tomb was suitable for the 9th transformation realm, very few 9th transformation realm swordsmen would travel outside. Therefore, there were almost no 9th transformation realm swordsmen who came here. In fact, the first level of the ancient sword tomb is suitable for sword grandmasters, the second level for normal true realm swordsmen, and the third level for powerful true realm swordsmen. The Shura sword of Gojoseon's voice suddenly rang out, directly entering Chu Mu's ears. As an ancient sword of Gojoseon, the Shura sword of Gojoseon's knowledge far surpassed Chu Mu's. He had been to the ancient sword tomb before, so he would definitely know more about it than Chu Mu. Why? Chu Mu's understanding of the ancient sword tomb was still insufficient. You will understand once you enter. The Shura sword of Gojoseon replied, with your strength, the first and second levels will not be a problem. However, you will have to be careful on the third level. Hearing this, Chu Mu's interest in the ancient sword tomb grew even more. Chu Mu, it really is you. A voice suddenly rang out from the side. Chu Mu turned around and saw Sidu Feng walking over with his perfect True Realm sword guards. Sidu Feng had a strange smile on his face, as if he knew everything and was threatening Chu Mu. Chu Mu? I feel that this name is very familiar. Who is Chu Mu? Someone nearby was startled when he heard the name, then asked in doubt. I also feel that this name is very familiar. Many gazes fell on Chu Mu, as if they wanted to see through Chu Mu. Although Chu Mu's reputation had spread far and wide before, after more than a year, there had been many incidents, big and small, that had gradually faded from people's sight. However, Chu Mu's deeds were still remembered by many. Hearing this, Chu Mu only laughed and ignored Sidu Feng. Sidu Feng approached Chu Mu and stared into Chu Mu's eyes. He smiled and asked, "Oh right, my other sword guard has also come to the Wind and Fire Desert. I wonder if Brother Chu has seen him?" "Nope," Chu Mu lightly replied. "I see. If Brother Chu has seen him, please let me know." Sidu Feng nodded and gave Chu Mu a deep look before turning around and leaving. His perfect True Realm sword guard stared at Chu Mu with a trace of killing intent in his eyes. "Brother Chu, there are some things that are best kept between you and me. Otherwise, we'll have to shed all pretense of cordiality. Once everyone knows, that would be a huge problem." Sidu Feng's voice suddenly entered Chu Mu's ears. Chu Mu was sure that Sidu Feng and his sword guard were suspecting him, but he wasn't sure. After all, they felt that he had just broken through to the True Realm. No matter how strong he was, it was impossible for him to kill him. As for what Sidu Feng had said, Chu Mu could also understand the meaning behind it. It was just like the sword guard who had died under the moon-slaying sword. They wanted to threaten Chu Mu with the secret of how Chu Mu had appeared outside when he was only at the 9th transformation realm and used a short year to break through to the True Realm. Although Sidu Feng had not mentioned any conditions, Chu Mu knew that he would not let go of this opportunity. However, the question was, would Chu Mu give him this opportunity? "Let's go into the ancient sword tomb," someone said. Immediately, someone took the lead and turned into a ray of light, rushing into the dark entrance and disappearing as if he had been swallowed. I remember now. Chu Mu is the sword hero who is ranked first on the heavenly sword hero list. Suddenly, a swordsman shouted, "It's him!" Impossible. It hasn't even been a year and a half. How could he have broken through to the True Realm so quickly? Amidst the discussions, Chu Mu had already entered the ancient sword tomb and arrived at the first floor. Although the ancient sword tomb was called a tomb, it was extremely large. At a glance, one could not see the end of it. Countless gray gases floated around like fog, emitting the smell of decay and death, making one feel a little depressed. Countless broken swords mixed with gray skeletons were scattered around, forming the ground of the first floor of the ancient sword tomb. There were also countless tombstones standing there, all of them crooked like a mass grave. This place was like a graveyard for the dead. The entrance of Chu Mu and the rest had disturbed the sleeping dead. All around them, soft whimpering sounds could be heard. It was faintly discernible, intermittent, like the whispers of ghosts. This sound made one's hair stand on end, as if countless evil spirits were awakening. Strange laughter could be heard, and all sorts of laughter and screams could be heard from the tombstones, making one's scalp go numb. The light in the surroundings seemed to have dimmed. Kacha kacha kacha, the sounds of bones rubbing against each other could be heard. Vaguely, the gray skeletons on the ground seemed to be moving. "Let's go!" Someone shouted and immediately flew forward. They were all true realm swordsmen. Although there were many treasures on the first floor of the ancient sword tomb, they were not attractive to true realm swordsmen. At least on the second floor they would be tempted. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 519. Another royal grade sword. Chu Mu shook his head helplessly as he stored the jet-black longsword that looked like it was made of some kind of bone into his spatial bracelet. Although the value of a king-grade sword wasn't low, the current him had the ability to create a king-grade sword himself. He could even create a top-tier king-grade sword. Therefore, no matter how many king-grade swords there were, Chu Mu wouldn't be moved. This was the third level of the ancient sword tomb. The gray aura floating in the air was even denser. The smell of death was also 10 times stronger than the first level. Here, Chu Mu realized that his mental power was obviously suppressed. He could only release it to a range of 10 meters. Even with his powerful mental power, he was suppressed to this extent, let alone the other primary realm swordsmen. They could only release their mental power to a range of 5 to 6 meters. Most of the primary realm swordsmen could not release their mental power at all. If there was any danger, they would not be able to sense it in advance like before. The first level of the ancient sword tomb was extremely large. Chu Mu and the other primary realm swordsmen had to fly for more than 6 hours before reaching the end. They killed the skeleton general and a group of powerful skeleton swordsmen guarding the entrance to the second level and entered the second level. The second level was more than twice the size of the first level. Moreover, the pressure on the second level was even greater. The flying speed of the primary realm swordsman had decreased by more than half. Just like that, the primary realm swordsman had to fly for more than 30 hours before reaching the end of the second level. They fought with the skeleton commanders and skeleton generals guarding the entrance to the third level and killed them all before entering the third level. The third level was more than twice the size of the second level. Moreover, the pressure here was even greater. The primary realm swordsman could no longer fly and could only walk. Close to 1,000 primary realm swordsmen entered the third level of the ancient sword tomb and spread out. It was like a small boat entering the ocean. It was difficult to see anyone else. It was difficult to sense the flow of time here. Therefore, Chu Mu did not know how long he had been here. He only vaguely felt that it was not short. Perhaps it had been more than a day. The third level of the ancient sword tomb was indeed a treasure trove. As long as one had the heart, they would be able to find royal-grade swords or related ores and metals. However, to the third level, these royal-grade swords were the most ordinary items. Most of them were left behind by the swordsmen who had died in the ancient sword tomb. Actually, the ancient sword tomb has a fourth floor. The Azura sword of Gojoseon's voice sounded in his ears, startling Chu Mu. The fourth floor? Chu Mu repeated. That's right. This is a secret that very few people know about. Back then, I entered the fourth level purely by coincidence. The Azura sword of Gojoseon said. Other than me, there were others who entered the fourth floor. Perhaps some of the swordsmen who entered this place this time also know of the existence of the fourth floor. What's the difference between the fourth floor and the third floor? Chu Mu could not help but ask curiously. The fourth floor is not as big as the third floor. It can't even compare to the first floor. However, the pressure on the fourth floor is even greater. You will have to experience this yourself. The Azura sword of Gojoseon said. What he meant was that he was going to tell Chu Mu how to enter the fourth floor. With your current strength, you can barely enter the fourth floor. Now, go forward until I tell you to stop. The Azura sword of Gojoseon instructed. Okay. Chu Mu nodded and strode forward. The fourth floor was extremely attractive to him. In the Tianfeng region, the various records of the ancient sword tomb only mentioned 3 floors. Therefore, most swordsmen believed that the ancient sword tomb only had 3 floors. If the Azura sword of Gojoseon did not point it out, Chu Mu would naturally think so too. The fourth floor. Although the Azura sword of Gojoseon did not explain clearly what was on the fourth floor, it was enough to attract Chu Mu's attention. The Heavenly Dipper soul condensation technique is what I obtained from the fourth floor. The Azura sword of Gojoseon suddenly said, causing Chu Mu's eyes to light up. The Heavenly Dipper soul condensation technique was a secret technique used by ancient swordsmen. To think that it was obtained from the fourth floor of the ancient sword tomb, this was completely out of Chu Mu's expectations. Then, the ancient sword tomb has existed since the ancient times? Chu Mu asked. Yes, but as for how it appeared, I am not sure. Maybe only some ancient existences would know. The Azura sword of Gojoseon said, those who can enter the fourth floor, as long as they don't die, will be able to obtain a fortuitous encounter. Chu Mu nodded and walked even faster. He was almost running. On the fiery wind desert there were people coming from afar. When they arrived at the dark entrance of the ancient sword tomb, they did not stop and directly entered. Among these people, there were many original realm swordsmen and some Chi high swordsmen. The original realm swordsmen flew past the first floor at an extremely fast speed and entered the second floor. After that, some of the weaker original realm swordsmen stayed on the second floor to look for their fortuitous encounter. A few of the stronger original realm swordsmen entered the third floor. However, the ancient sword tomb was huge. Even if they could fly, it would take them at least 2 days to fly from one side to the other. Not to mention that they could only run in this situation where they could not fly. Brother Chu, why don't you join our team? We can take care of each other. Brother Chu, this place is filled with danger. If you are not careful, you could die. Why don't you join our team and seek fortuitous encounters together? On the way, Chu Mu met 2 teams. They knew of Chu Mu's identity and invited him. However, Chu Mu rejected them. He was now heading towards the fourth floor. Brother Chu, we are really fated. 2 figures walked towards him. One of them smiled and said to Chu Mu. It was Situ Feng and his sword guard. Chu Mu stopped and did not say anything. His expression was calm. As long as Brother Chu is willing to work for me, I will treat you like my own Brother Chu. Once I become the young master of the Situ family, Brother Chu will be able to enjoy all the resources of the family and increase your strength even faster. Situ Feng said straightforwardly. Before, he was threatening and now he was tempting. His goal was obvious. He wanted to use the so-called secret to threaten Chu Mu and make Chu Mu submit and work for him. If Chu Mu submitted, then his sword heart would be damaged. In the future, he might be able to cultivate to Sword Saint or even become a Sword of Gojoseon. However, he would be a weak Sword of Gojoseon. As for creating his own Sword Dao, that would be even more impossible. Before that, I asked someone a question. Chu Mu let out a breath and said indifferently, between facing trouble that has yet to come and submitting to threats, which one would I choose? What do you guys think? If you are smart, then you should choose to submit. Situ Feng's expression changed at first, then he sneered. The sword guard beside him glared at Chu Mu. An extremely sharp killing intent burst out, as if it wanted to pierce through Chu Mu. Senior, I will have to trouble you this time. Chu Mu transmitted his voice. With your current strength, it will indeed be difficult to deal with the 2 of them. The Shura sword of Gojoseon replied. Once one of them escapes and the news spreads, it will also be troublesome for you. As soon as the Shura sword of Gojoseon finished speaking, the crimson sword of Gojoseon in front of Chu Mu's chest flew up by itself, releasing a red light. Then, the crimson sword rapidly expanded, and the Shura sword of Gojoseon's spirit body appeared once again. After more than a year of silent cultivation, the Shura sword of Gojoseon's spirit body had become more solid than before. Situ Feng and the complete Origin Realm swordsmen widened their eyes. Their faces were filled with disbelief. The scene in front of them was beyond their imagination. Now I will send you down to accompany him, Chu Mu said. The Shura sword of Gojoseon held the Shura sword in his hand and swung it out without the slightest trace of smoke or fire. Wait! Situ Feng was almost scared out of his wits as he hurriedly yelled. The middle-aged sword guard directly pulled out his sword. With a roar, his body flashed and appeared in front of Situ Feng. All of his power surged out and converged into the sword. It was incomparably bright. This was the strongest sword he had ever used in his life. However, they did not even have the strength of a sword saint. Under the ancient Shura sword of Gojoseon, they were extremely weak. Even if the Shura sword of Gojoseon was only left with its spirit body, it would still be able to kill a sword saint. A red arc of light seemed to come from the horizon, instantly cutting off the sword guard's ultimate attack. In a thousandth of a second, it passed through the middle-aged sword guard's body, but was blocked by a ray of light released from Situ Feng's body. With a cracking sound, the light on Situ Feng's body shattered like an eggshell, and the scarlet arc of light dissipated at the same time. Situ Feng immediately reacted. His sword yuan surged, and a layer of blood light rolled out from his body, turning into a blood-red flame that burned fiercely, emitting an incomparably terrifying aura. Then, with a boom, Situ Feng shot up into the sky, turning around to escape. Moon beheading! Chu Mu roared as the desolate sky sword was unsheathed. A 10-meter-long dark golden crescent moon broke through the sky and caught up to Situ Feng at an even faster speed. With a boom, Situ Feng spat out a mouthful of blood. Countless blood-red flames splashed out, but his speed suddenly increased. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from Chu Mu and the Shura sword of Gojoseon's sight. Chu Mu's face was not looking good. He did not expect Situ Feng to escape even with the help of the Shura sword of Gojoseon. He had a protective treasure on him that allowed him to block my sword. Then, he used a secret technique that burned his blood and sword yuan in exchange for astonishing speed. The Shura sword of Gojoseon calmly said, "The pressure here made my divine soul body feel uncomfortable, so my reaction was a bit slow. That's why I couldn't keep him here. However, you don't need to worry. After using this blood escape secret technique, the side effects are extremely great. After being hit by your sword, once the secret technique was stopped, even if he didn't die, he would still be heavily injured and unconscious. In a place like the ancient sword tomb, it is impossible for him to survive." Chu Mu's expression returned to normal, but his heart was filled with shock. The ancient sword tomb was truly strange. It could even suppress the Shura sword of Gojoseon's divine soul body, causing his reaction to be a bit slower and allowing Situ Feng to escape. However, just as the Shura sword of Gojoseon had said, after using the blood escape secret technique and then being hit by his moon beheading, even if Situ Feng did not die, he would not be far from death. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 520. With a bang, the flame-like blood-red light fell from the sky like a meteor, heavily smashing into a gray tombstone. His entire body was bent from the back, and it was obvious that his spine was completely broken. Blood dripped onto the tombstone. Shortly after, a strange gray light appeared on the tombstone. Then, gray chi emerged from the tombstone and entered Situ Feng's body. Kacha, 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 Situ Feng's body moved. It was abruptly straightened and strangely stopped on the tombstone. With a swoosh, his body rushed up and landed next to the tombstone. His eyes were a strange gray color, and his originally handsome face had gray aura flowing around it. It was incomparably malevolent and frightening. His body emitted bursts of kacha-kacha explosive sound. His body was twitching, gradually growing taller and shorter, and finally returning to its original form. The gray in his eyes also turned black. How many years has it been? I'm finally alive again. Situ Feng's mouth opened slightly, and an obscure voice sounded. His body flashed, and he turned into a stream of light, flying away. His speed was shocking. The fourth floor, this time I must enter. Stop. The Azura sword of Gojosian suddenly said. Chu Mu stopped abruptly. There were tombstones all around. Look at the tombstones around you. What's different about them? The Azura sword of Gojosian said. Chu Mu looked at them one by one, and his brows slightly wrinkled. There were not many tombstones around, only 8 in total. Compared to the tombstones he saw before, they were about twice as big. Each tombstone was emitting a shocking aura. It was very rich, and each tombstone had a different color. Chu Mu glanced at them. The 8 tombstones were respectively red, light blue, brown, gold, green, cyan, purple, and ice blue. The aura they emitted was not only strong death aura, but also hot, gentle, thick, and sharp vitality, elegant, violent, and icy coldness. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, ice, and thunder. Chu Mu muttered. That's right. These 8 tombstones are the 8-fold sword steels. They are the entrances to the 4th level. The Azura sword of Gojosian said, although some swordsmen will feel that the 8-fold sword steel is special, they won't be able to open the entrance to the 4th floor without knowing the method to open it. At this moment, another group of silhouettes flashed over from afar, appearing at the 8-fold sword steel. When they saw Chu Mu, they were first surprised, but when they saw the others, their faces were filled with vigilance. Chu Mu realized that other than himself, there were 31 other swordsmen here. Some of them looked older, in their 30s, while others looked younger than him. The only thing they had in common was that each of them had reached the origin realm. Among them, there were 3 people with the strongest auras. They had all reached the origin realm Deshang realm. Chu Mu could feel that their auras were extremely sharp and stable. They were far from what the Deshang realm swordsman, Situ Feng, who had died under his moon-slashing sword, could compare with. Geniuses. These people were all true geniuses. Each of them had a powerful force behind them. Among these people, in terms of cultivation, Chu Mu was the lowest. This was because the others were at least at the beginning of the origin realm. Because Chu Mu didn't have enough sword yuan, he could only be considered as half of the beginning. But in terms of strength, it might not be the case. Could it be that all of you are here for these 8 tombstones? One of the 3 people with the highest cultivation, a middle-aged swordsman in a green robe, said in a clear voice after scanning the group. Nonsense. Another black-robed Origin Realm swordsman in a Deshang realm sneered. Very well. It seems like everyone knows some secrets that others don't. The green-robed swordsman didn't get angry at all. Instead, he continued with a smile. In order to open the 8-fold sword steel, we need to follow a certain order. But after opening it, some powerful enemies will appear. Since everyone wants to enter the 4th floor, we should work together to open the entrance. Only then can we enter the 4th floor smoothly. As for what we can obtain after entering the 4th floor, it all depends on our own luck and ability. During the opening of the steel, everyone has to attack each other. Otherwise, we will become public enemies. Sikong Jian will be the first to not let him go. As he spoke, the green-robed swordsman's eyes shot out an extremely sharp light. In terms of cultivation, he was one of the top 3. Moreover, he belonged to the category of geniuses. His strength was even more shocking and could definitely be ranked in the top 3. His words carried a lot of weight. I agree. The 3rd Origin Realm swordsman in a purple robe nodded his head. The black-robed swordsman coldly smiled and didn't object. Since the top 3 swordsmen had the same opinion, the other swordsmen wouldn't object. After all, opening the entrance to the 4th floor was the most important thing. We have a total of 32 people. We can be divided into 8 groups. Each group of 4 will be responsible for 1 steel. Sikong Jian said as he divided the groups, when the time comes, each group will inject sword energy into the steel and activate it according to the order, Without needing Chu Mu to ask the sword of Gojoseon, Sikong Jian quickly explained the opening method and divided the 8 groups into the first group, the second group, the third group to the 8th group. Then, the 8 groups stood according to the order of opening the steel. 4 people in a group surrounded the steel. The order of opening was metal, wood, wind, water, ice, fire, thunder, earth. Those who didn't know wouldn't be able to open it. Even if they knew, they wouldn't be able to open it without enough manpower. Senior Sword of Gojoseon, if I am the only one, wouldn't I be unable to open the entrance to the 4th floor? Chu Mu asked. Of course you can. The Sword of Gojoseon replied. You only need to use spirit stones to set up an array and inject energy into the steel according to the order. However, this method will take a bit longer. The first group, inject sword energy. Sikong Jian instructed. He was in the 8th group and could direct the actions of each group. The first group of 4 swordsmen immediately pressed their hands on the steel and injected sword energy. The speed of injecting sword energy was stable. After about 10 breaths of time, Sikong Jian instructed the second group of swordsmen to inject sword energy. In this way, every 10 breaths of time, there would be a group of swordsmen injecting sword energy into the steel. After the 8 steels were injected with sword energy, they began to emit a strong light and a buzzing sound. The aura of death directly gushed out and filled the surroundings, turning into a gray mist. Strange roars followed, like the weeping of ghosts and the roars of fierce beasts. One after another, it was louder than the other, as if it was going to pierce everyone's eardrums. Finally, each steel's light reached its limit, as if they were little suns of different colors. It was so shocking that everyone had to close their eyes. Otherwise, they would feel uncomfortable. Even Chu Mu, with his perfect sword vision, could only squint his eyes into a slit and barely see the changes of the 8-fold sword steel. Tyrannical energy rushed out from the 8 steels, directly pushing back the 32 swordsmen around the steels. They could not help but retreat a few hundred meters. Intense energy fluctuations of different colors collided with each other. The entire 3rd level of the ancient sword tomb trembled violently, as if an earthquake was coming and it was about to collapse. What's going on? In other places of the 3rd floor, the swordsmen felt the violent shaking of the tomb, and their faces changed drastically. The 4th floor is about to open, I need to speed up. Sidu Feng looked up and could vaguely see 8 different colored lights in the distance. He immediately muttered to himself, and his sword energy erupted, increasing his speed by 3 times. Even if he was in a strange situation, he was still suppressed here and could not fly. Chu Mu squinted his eyes and saw a magical scene. He saw the 8 different colored lights colliding in the center of the 8 steels, and countless sparks flew out. Gradually, a ball of light with 8 different colors appeared in the center of the 8 steels. It began to expand from the size of a fist, and in the blink of an eye, it reached the size of a human head, and it continued to grow. In less than 10 breaths of time, the 8-colored ball of light continued to absorb the 8 different energies and expanded to 2 meters in diameter. Finally, it stabilized, and the 8 steels seemed to have used up all of their energy. Everyone opened their eyes and stared at the ball of light in the center. The 8 colors were constantly circulating and colliding. It's about to open. The 32 swordsmen all stared at the ball of light, and they were all a little nervous. Within the ball of light, the 8 colors were moving at an extremely fast speed. When they collided, they became blurry, as if they had merged into one. Immediately after, a terrifying explosion sounded from within the ball of light. It was like thunder from the heavens, and it spread out. Wave after wave of sound attacked in all directions, and the surrounding gray aura surged like waves. In the center of the ball of light, a gray dot appeared. In the blink of an eye, it expanded and filled the entire ball of light, stretching into a gray door of light. This is the entrance to the 4th floor. It only appeared for a short time. The Shura sword of Gojoseon reminded. The entrance has appeared. Let's go. Sikong Jian shouted. His body moved, and with a whoosh, he rushed towards the gray door of light. The black-robed swordsman and the purple-robed swordsman also moved at the same time. The three of them rushed into the gray door of light almost side by side. The remaining 29 swordsmen also reacted quickly. Each of them used their movement techniques, and rushed hundreds of meters, rushing towards the gray door of light. In the blink of an eye, the 29 swordsmen, including Chu Mu, all rushed into the gray door of light. From the moment the door of light opened until now, less than 10 breaths of time had passed. Following that, the gray door of light began to shrink. In just one breath of time, it had shrunk to half its original size. In another breath of time, it would disappear. In the blink of an eye, a figure shot out like a meteor, crossing hundreds of meters and rushing into the gray door of light. The moment he entered, the gray door of light closed and everything returned to normal. The previous scene seemed like an illusion, and some of the swordsmen who had rushed over were confused. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 521. Everyone, is there anyone who wants to form a team with me and move together? Once they entered the 4th floor, Sikong Jian immediately said and began to recruit people. Me! Me too. Sikong Jian was very strong and looked very knowledgeable. It was easy for people to trust him. Immediately, several swordsmen expressed their desire to form a team with him. Humph! The black-robed swordsman snorted. His figure flashed and he left. The purple-robed swordsman did not say a word. He turned into a flash of lightning and left in another direction. Among the remaining swordsmen, they formed teams of 2s and 3s. No need to form a team. The Azura sword of Gojoseon transmitted. Chu Mu declined the other's invitation and moved alone. Many years ago, the Azura sword of Gojoseon had personally come here. At that time, there were also people who came here. Now, it was only the descendants of those people who came here again. Chu Mu brought the Azura sword of Gojoseon's godly soul here. It was completely different. In terms of familiarity with the 4th floor of the ancient sword tomb, the Azura sword of Gojoseon was the most familiar. With the godly soul of the Azura sword of Gojoseon by his side, Chu Mu's advantage was more obvious than the others. Forward, forward, forward without stopping. The 4th floor was like an independent world. It had a gray sky and gray clouds that were condensed like lead block. It was as if they were going to fall and crush the ground, making people feel even more oppressed. The ground was also gray. It wasn't like the first level where there were skeletons everywhere, nor were there tombstones everywhere. However, there was a strange aura emitting from it, as if there were illusions everywhere. It was easy to get lost in it. Chu Mu was like a lone traveler walking on this strange ground. The gray fog was very thick and the visibility was very low. At this time, Chu Mu was moving in the direction that the Azura sword of Gojoseon said. Unlike the other swordsmen who entered here, Chu Mu had a clear goal. Without a clear goal, one could only rely on luck. With a clear goal, the final harvest would definitely be better. After a period of time, Chu Mu saw a tombstone. Behind the tombstone was a tomb, standing alone in the vast land. This should be an intermediate tomb. You can give it a try and see if you can obtain the fortune within, the Azura sword of Gojoseon said. According to the Azura sword of Gojoseon, there were some tombs in the 4th level of the ancient sword tomb. They were different from the tombstones in the first 3 levels. Each tomb represented an opportunity. The tombs here were also divided into low-level, mid-level, and high-level tombs. Above high-level tombs were king-level tombs, but king-level tombs were extremely rare. There weren't even many high-level tombs. Moreover, it was difficult to tell the level of the tomb just from its appearance. The Azura sword of Gojoseon could tell because he knew this place better than others and also because of his powerful divine sense. Middle-level tomb. Chu Mu's figure flashed and appeared in front of the tombstone that seemed to be both black and gray. According to the Azura sword of Gojoseon's instructions, he pressed his palm on the tombstone and inserted Sky Desolation sword energy. In his other hand, Chu-Mu held a mid-level Sky Desolation stone and absorbed the pure Desolation chi within it to recover his depleted sword energy. After a while, Chu-Mu raised his palm and saw the tombstone emit bursts of light. The tomb behind the tombstone automatically separated, and something flew out and floated in the air. Not bad, there really is something. Although the Azura sword of Gojoseon didn't appear, he could clearly feel everything that was happening outside. Chu-Mu extended his hand and grabbed the ball of light that was burning like a flame. When it landed in his hand, it turned into a piece of fiery red jade. From time to time, flames would jump out from it. There is some information recorded in this jade. It could be a cultivation technique or comprehension. You can use your mental power to check it out. The Azura sword of Gojoseon said. Chu-Mu's mind moved, and his mental strength was released. It wrapped around the fiery red jade in his hand and entered it. Instantly, Chu-Mu felt the information inside the jade. So it's a secret technique. After 10 breaths, Chu-Mu finished reading the information in the jade and said to himself, "And it's the Burning Heaven Triplet secret technique. It's a pity that this secret technique can only amplify the fire element. It's useless to me." In the battle for Providence, the secret technique that Lai Kongyang used seemed to be the first 2 moves of the Burning Heaven Triplet. Could it be that he's missing the third move? Although it was useless to him, there was no doubt that the Burning Heaven Triplet was a powerful secret technique. Even if it was used by an Origin Realm swordsman, it would still be able to amplify his strength. It was very valuable. Let's continue forward and find the tomb. With this reward, Chu-Mu felt very motivated. Chu-Mu didn't know how much time had passed before he came across another tomb. According to the Azura sword of Gojoseon, it was a high-level tomb. Unfortunately, it was surrounded by 4 swordsmen. One of them was at the initial stage of the Origin Realm, while the other 3 were at the initial stage of the Origin Realm. This was someone else's opportunity. Under normal circumstances, Chu-Mu wouldn't have the intention to snatch it. However, the other party didn't see it that way. When they saw Chu-Mu appear, they all stared at Chu-Mu with extreme vigilance. They looked like they were ready to attack if Chu-Mu made the slightest move. Chu-Mu didn't say anything and just walked forward. The 4 swordsmen all let out a sigh of relief. Those who could enter this place were all geniuses. Every one of them had powerful strength. Even if Chu-Mu's cultivation wasn't as strong as an initial stage swordsman, no one dared to underestimate him. Once a fight broke out, they might have the confidence to kill him. However, it might cause some unexpected changes. Therefore, it was best not to make a move. Although he missed a high-level tomb, Chu-Mu didn't regret it at all. With the guidance of the Azura sword of Gojoseon, he believed that he could also find a high-level tomb. As time passed by, Chu-Mu found another tomb. It was a low-level tomb, but nothing appeared after he opened it. Even if it was a high-level tomb, there might not be anything inside. The ancient sword tomb will only be open for half a year. Once half a year is up, it will go back into the fiery wind desert and hide itself. No one will be able to find it. The 4th level also belongs to the ancient sword tomb, so it will also be open for half a year. It hasn't even been a month since I entered the ancient sword tomb. I still have time to look for my opportunity. This is a middle-level tomb. There is a 60% chance that there will be something inside. The Azura sword of Gojoseon said. Low-level tombs only had a 30% chance of containing something. Middle-level tombs had a 60% chance, and high-level tombs had an 80% chance. 60% was a pretty good chance. If there was nothing inside, it wouldn't be strange at all. I wonder what I can get this time? Chu-Mu thought to himself. With a flash, he appeared in front of the tombstone. While he was moving forward, he was holding a middle-level desolate stone. He was constantly absorbing the pure desolate chi within to refine the desolate sword energy. Although it hadn't reached the entry level of the origin realm, it was already a lot better than when he had just broken through. Wait! A loud shout was heard. 7 to 8 figures flew over at an extremely fast speed. The one leading them was Sikong Jian. Other than Sikong Jian, there were 7 other swordsmen. 2 of them were at the initial level of the origin realm, while the other 5 were at the entry level of the origin realm. According to Chu Mu's knowledge, there were a total of 32 swordsmen who had entered this place. Sikong Jian's group alone had 8 of them, which was a quarter of the total. With such strength, Chu Mu knew very well that he was no match for them. The 8 of them flew over and surrounded the tomb. "You are Chu Mu, right? I heard that you have great talent. You only used a year and a half to reach the 9th transformation realm. Your future achievements will not be low, provided that you don't die prematurely," Sikong Jian said to Chu Mu with a smile. His tone was very gentle. "I hope that we can become friends. Because when it comes to dealing with enemies, I usually eliminate them completely." Chu Mu slightly frowned, but didn't say anything. "We have only seen a few tombs ever since we entered this place. This is the first one we have seen. Let's be friends and let us have this tomb. How about that?" Sikong Jian said with a smile. His eyes stared straight at Chu Mu. There was a trace of sharpness in his eyes, which gave Chu Mu a lot of pressure. These days, the so-called treasures belong to the virtuous. If you are strong enough, you are virtuous. One of the swordsmen at the initial level of the origin realm said in a low voice. Even though he was unwilling, Chu Mu could only back off. Right now, he was still no match for Sikong Jian. Not to mention, there were still 7 other swordsmen. Even if he let the Azura sword of Gojoseon attack, it would still be difficult to kill all of them. Because on the 4th floor of the ancient sword tomb, the Azura sword of Gojoseon's suppression was even more obvious. His reaction was slower, and every time he attacked, it would consume more of his soul energy. If he used the meteor sword energy, he might be able to do it. However, Chu Mu felt that it was not worth it to use the meteor sword energy for a middle-grade tomb that only had a 60% chance of containing something. Without saying a word, Chu Mu only glanced at the 8 swordsmen, as if he wanted to remember their faces. Then, he quickly backed off. Sikong Jian and the others looked at Chu Mu, who was quickly backing off, and let out a light laugh. They did not think much of it. They were all geniuses, and geniuses were all arrogant. They would not easily admit that they were inferior to others. Even if Chu Mu's future was limitless, what about them? Could it be limited? One had to know that each of them had outstanding talent, and they had the support of a powerful force behind them. They could obtain all kinds of resources to aid their cultivation. Their future achievements would definitely not be low. As for Sikong Jian, he did not put Chu Mu in his eyes at all. When Chu Mu grew up, he believed that he would have gone even further. "Do you feel unreconciled?" the Azura sword of Gojoseon asked. "There is nothing to be unreconciled about. Everything is because I am not strong enough," Chu Mu replied calmly. His heart was calm. Anger? Unreconciled? None of that mattered. This only made him realize the importance of strength. If he had the cultivation of Deshang in the origin realm, he would definitely not be afraid of the 8 swordsmen. He would definitely have the ability to compete with them. It is good that you have such understanding. Everything is based on strength. The so-called virtuous person in front of a powerful swordsman is only a layer of strength. The Azura sword of Gojoseon said, "You are still very young. Your talent is above theirs. It is only a matter of time before you surpass them. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation." Chapter 522. The 4th floor of the ancient sword tomb seemed to be a world of its own. However, the sky remained the same, as if it had been frozen. Chu Mu walked across the vast land, guided by the Shura sword of Gojoseon. Whenever he encountered a tomb, he would open it. Unfortunately, there weren't many tombs in the 4th level of the ancient sword tomb. Most of them were low-level tombs with nothing in them. Perhaps there had been something there a long time ago, but it had been taken away by someone, leaving behind an empty tomb. After being stimulated by Sikong Jian and the others, Chu Mu desired to become stronger. However, increasing one's strength was not something that could be done overnight. He also understood this point. Therefore, he was not in a rush to increase his strength. Instead, he let nature take its course. Stop! The Shura sword of Gojoseon's voice sounded again, carrying a rare seriousness. Move 100 meters to the left. The Shura sword of Gojoseon's voice sounded again. On the 4th floor of the ancient sword tomb, the deeper one went, the thicker the gray fog became. Visibility was greatly reduced. With Chu Mu's eyesight, he could only see about 50 meters. Only the Shura sword of Gojoseon's divine sense could cover 100 meters and sense things ahead of time. Following the Shura sword of Gojoseon's instructions, Chu Mu quickly turned left. After walking 100 meters forward, he was suddenly stunned. In front of him was a huge tomb. The tombstone of this tomb was at least 10 meters tall. The tomb behind the tombstone was also 10 meters tall. Compared to the previous tombs, this tomb was like the tomb of a giant. An ancient and vicissitude aura surrounded the huge tomb. The gray fog flowed around the tomb, emitting a thick smell of death. Standing in front of this huge ancient tomb, Chu Mu felt that he could not breathe. It was extremely stifling. The tombstone in front of him seemed to be constantly growing, like a towering mountain. This is a king-class tomb. The Shura sword of Gojoseon's voice rang out. The seriousness and joy in his voice startled Chu Mu. Many years ago, when I entered this place, I had never encountered a king-class grave. I didn't expect your luck to be so good. A king-class grave. Chu Mu stared at the 10-meter-tall black tombstone with wide eyes. According to the Azura sword of Gojoseon, there was a 100% chance that a king-level tomb would contain a treasure. It was just that they didn't know what kind of treasure it was. Open it, the Azura sword of Gojoseon said, his voice filled with undisguised excitement. Chu Mu took a step forward and pressed his palm on the black tombstone. He felt that the tombstone was extremely cold, as if it was going to freeze his blood. He immediately channeled his sword energy and dispelled the coldness. Then, he injected the Sky Wasteland sword energy, which had reached the entry level, into the huge tombstone. After 3 breaths of time, the tombstone emitted a buzzing sound. A weak black light appeared on the surface of the tombstone, faintly discernible. In the next breath, the tomb behind the tombstone began to shake. It rumbled like the mountains were collapsing. A crack slowly opened at the top of the tomb, and an extremely terrifying death aura spread out. It hit Chu Mu in the face, and he couldn't help but take a few steps back. After another breath, Chu Mu felt goosebumps all over his body. His pores were about to explode. A cold current flowed from the soles of his feet along his spine to his head. A strong sense of danger made him quickly back away from the tombstone. "Be careful." The Azura sword of Gojoseon's voice sounded again. It was full of seriousness. Kacha 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 sounds came from the sky. It was like the sound of bones rubbing against each other. It made Chu Mu's hair stand on end. Then, from the crack in the tomb, an arm suddenly stretched out. It grabbed the edge of the tomb and tried to pull itself out. It was a white bone arm that was even thicker than Chu Mu's waist. It flickered with a sparkling luster, and an incomparably powerful aura was unceasingly being emitted from the arm, creating a whirlwind that whistled through the air. There is a tomb guard. It seems that the treasures in this king-level tomb are no small matter, the Azura sword of Gojoseon said. Following that, a huge skull emerged from the crack in the tomb. It had the appearance of a human skull, but it was much larger. Within its pitch-black eye sockets, a faint blue will-o'-the-wisp burned. As it moved, 2 streaks of bright light shot out like meteors. "Kill it!" The Azura sword of Gojosian quickly shouted. There was a hint of anxiety in his voice. He pulled out his sword, and the dark gold crescent moon broke through the sky. In an instant, it bombarded the skull that had just reached out its second arm. There was a kacha sound, and the dark gold crescent moon shattered. The skull, however, was unharmed. Chumu was horrified. He had used all of his strength in that attack, and its power was unparalleled. Yet, it had not been able to hurt the skull. It had not even caused the slightest bit of damage. How was this possible? With a roar, a visible sound wave came from the skull's mouth. It turned into a storm and shook Chumu. It bombarded him, and he was forced to retreat. His blood was boiling. The 2 arms of the skull supported the 2 sides of the tomb. With a sudden burst of strength, its body rushed out of the crack in the tomb, leaving the lower half of its body in the tomb. "Senior, this tomb guard is too strong," Chumu said. "I know. This tomb guard's strength should be equivalent to a powerful sword venerable level swordsman. With your current strength, you are no match for it. It only needs 1 strike to kill you," the Azura sword of Gojosian said solemnly. "Moreover, once the tomb guard appears, no matter where you run, as long as you are still in the 4th level of the ancient sword tomb, it will continue to pursue you. It will only return to the tomb after killing you. Or you can only obtain the treasures in the tomb if you kill it." Chumu's face changed. This was equivalent to a dead end. It was either you die or I die. Even if I appear, it won't be easy to kill it, the Azura sword of Gojosian said. "Once I use most of my strength to kill it, I will definitely fall into a deep sleep to recover the strength of my soul. It seems that I have to use the meteor sword essence," Chumu said secretly. Although there was only 1 meteor sword essence, and it was very precious, he did not hesitate to use it. At this time, the skeleton guardian had already stepped out of the tomb with one of its thick legs. The other leg was about to fall out of the tomb's crack. After that, it would be time for it to attack. With a thought, the terrifying meteor sword essence in the vast spiritual world suddenly rushed out from between his eyebrows. It turned into a dazzling stream of light and flew towards the skeleton guardian like a falling meteor. In an instant, the surroundings were overshadowed. Only the meteor sword essence emitted a dazzling brilliance, breaking the world apart. The skeleton guardian's second leg fell. With a rumble, the earth shook. Its hand reached behind its back and pulled out a huge white bone sword that was as big as a door. With a whistling sound, the huge white bone sword was raised high and slashed forward. It was as if it wanted to split the heaven and earth in front of it. A thick grayish-white aura condensed into a terrifying sword of death and slashed towards the meteor sword essence. In an instant, the whole world seemed to have turned into nothingness. There was no sound. A strange scene appeared. All the energy rushed towards the skeleton guardian. It was as if the power released by the meteor sword essence had reflected all the energy. Then, the meteor sword essence burst out with 10 times the brilliance. It defeated the white bone sword's sword and blasted towards the skeleton guardian's head in an invincible manner. The meteor sword essence's power was unparalleled. The powerful skeleton guardian could not resist at all. Suddenly, the meteor sword essence hit its forehead and penetrated through the back of its head in an instant. In an instant, the blue flame in the skeleton guardian's eye sockets was extinguished. It meant that its soul flame was extinguished under the power of the meteor sword essence. The huge skeleton guardian didn't even have the time to display its formidable strength before it died under the meteor sword essence. Its thick and sturdy white bones fell down one after another. In the blink of an eye, a small hill of white bones was piled up next to the grave. The meteor sword essence drew a beautiful arc in the air and flew towards Chumu. In the blink of an eye, it entered Chumu's spiritual world. Chumu checked and found that the meteor sword essence had shrunk by half. In other words, killing this skeleton guardian had consumed half of the meteor sword essence's power. I hope the treasures in this king-level grave are good. Chu Mu smiled bitterly. The meteor sword essence was his trump card. Now that half of it had been used, if the treasures in the grave were not good enough, it would be a waste. Don't worry. The treasures will not disappoint you. The Shura sword of Gojoseon was very confident. Chu Mu's body flashed, and he appeared next to the grave. At the same time, a ball of light rose from the cracked grave like a rising sun. A strong fluctuation spread out. Chu Mu reached out and grabbed the ball of light. The ball of light flew over and landed in Chu Mu's hand. It was a black jade pendant in the shape of a water droplet. Is this another treasure that records skills? Chu Mu thought to himself. With a move of his mind, his mental strength was immediately released. It wrapped around the droplet-shaped black jade pendant and penetrated into it. In the next moment, Chu Mu felt the information inside the jade pendant explode like a flood. Chu Mu's spiritual power flowed into Chu Mu's mind. He recorded and read the information one by one. The amount of information was huge, and it took a full 15 minutes for it to finish. Chu Mu's eyes were full of surprise. He was shocked by the skills recorded in the black jade pendant. The heaven-seizing technique. It sounded extraordinary, and the content was even more extraordinary. This technique was very strange because it could not increase one's cultivation, sword power, or soul strength. It could be said that the heaven-seizing technique did not increase the swordsman's strength at all. However, its role was incomparable, immeasurable, and irreplaceable. It could increase one's cultivation talent. Talent determined one's achievements. This was the most widely spread saying in the ancient sword continent. It was also the truth. The level of talent determined the future achievements. There were occasional exceptions that could be surpassed, but it was only by one level. It was absolutely impossible to continue. Everyone's cultivation talent wasn't necessarily the same, but one's cultivation talent could be improved. However, to improve one's cultivation talent, the difficulty was truly too high. Almost the majority of people were unable to do it, so Chu Mu's body faintly trembled due to excitement. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 523. A swordsman's talent could be categorized into several categories: cultivation talent, battle talent, comprehension talent, and so on. A person with a high cultivation talent might not necessarily be powerful, but any swordsman who wanted to go further on this path would need cultivation talent. Since ancient times, there had been countless talented swordsmen who had terrifying comprehension and battle talent. They could easily challenge those of a higher level, but in the end they were stuck at a certain level due to their lack of cultivation talent. They were unable to break through for the rest of their lives and could only regretfully turn into dust. One had to admit that cultivation talent was like a natural chasm that hindered the future of many talented swordsmen. In the central main sword domain, most of the swordsmen had a level 6 cultivation talent. In other words, their limit was the peak of the complete astral realm. Occasionally, there would be one or two lucky swordsmen who broke through to the astral realm due to some fortuitous encounter. However, they could not continue to improve. Therefore, in the central main sword domain, most of the swordsmen had the strength of a sword venerable. After all, the lifespan of an astral realm swordsman was as long as 1,000 years. Because Chu Mu had consumed the Qinglan divine fruit and the Tianhuang fruit, his cultivation talent had increased to level 6. In other words, his limit was the astral realm. As of now, Chu Mu had already cultivated to the beginning of the astral realm. Although it would still take a long time to reach the peak of the complete astral realm, according to his own estimation, it would not be too long. When the time came, he would have to worry about how to break through. Obtaining the heaven-seizing technique was equivalent to obtaining a solution to his problem. The heaven-seizing technique was different from the Tianhuang fruit. The Tianhuang fruit could directly increase one's cultivation after consumption. However, it could only increase one level at most. Moreover, the Tianhuang fruit was too rare and difficult to obtain. The heaven-seizing technique was different. Although it could not be increased in a short period of time, as long as one cultivated, there would be a qualitative change. Moreover, it could be increased continuously. 2 ways. Chu Mu's gaze turned deep. There were 2 ways to cultivate the heaven-seizing grand technique. One was a natural cultivation method. It was stable and wouldn't cause any side effects. However, it would take a long time. It would usually take 10 to 20 years or even longer. The other method was a bit evil, and that was to steal the cultivation talent of other swordsmen and absorb their cultivation talent. Of course, one could only absorb a very small portion of it, but as long as there was enough of it, one could still improve in a short period of time. Moreover, there were no side effects. The only requirement was that one had to have a powerful soul and will. It seems like there are no side effects, but in fact, when you experience the thrill of the improvement of your talent, it's easy to sink into it and find it hard to extricate yourself. The Azura sword of Gojoseon said, "Once you are unable to extricate yourself, you will eventually lose yourself. Imagine that kind of outcome." After listening to the Azura sword of Gojoseon's explanation, Chu Mu instantly understood the pros and cons. No wonder the cultivation method required a powerful soul and will. Only with a powerful soul and will would one have powerful self-control. Only then would it be easy to lose yourself and sink into it. In the end, one would be consigned to eternal damnation. You should be very clear about the consequences. Therefore, as for how you should cultivate, you should know in your heart. I won't say much. The Azura sword of Gojoseon said. Chu Mu nodded. He indeed had his own ideas. Putting the droplet-shaped black jade pendant into his spatial wristband, Chu Mu continued to advance. Sikong Jian, I found this tomb first. Now, take your people and scram. The middle-aged black-robed swordsman's face was cold, like a poisonous snake in the dark. His gloomy eyes flashed with a frightening cold light. His gaze swept over and landed on Sikong Jian's face. That kind of tone was like the extreme north wind. Xiangyang, treasures have always belonged to the virtuous. From the current situation, I am the virtuous one. Sikong Jian was not angry at all. Instead, he faintly smiled and said. Xiangyang was alone, while Sikong Jian's side had a total of 8 people. Just Sikong Jian's strength alone was not lower than Xiangyang's. Adding the other 7, they were enough to kill Xiangyang. Well said. Treasures have always belonged to the virtuous one. But I believe that I am the virtuous one. Another voice sounded. The middle-aged purple-robed swordsman suddenly appeared. He was also alone. The 3 sides formed a tripartite formation. Zhou Xian, you also want to join in the fun? You should know that there are some things that should not be done. That would be fatal. Sikong Jian's face slightly changed. His eyes narrowed, emitting a cold light. His tone carried a hint of threat. I, Zhou Xian, agree with what you said. However, the fun right now is not enough to kill me. Zhou Xian's face was full of confidence. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. A desolate, killing intent spread out, filling the surroundings, forming a whistling sound like a storm. Suddenly, a human figure appeared, as if breaking this desolate atmosphere, causing all of their attention to shift. 3 waves of violent, killing intent rushed out, but the approaching figure did not move at all. It was as if he had crawled out from hell. The dark figure gave people an incomparably gloomy and oppressive feeling. A strange aura that caused people to frown deeply spread out. I'll give you 2 choices. Scram or die. A low and oppressive voice sounded, but it was also like the roar of a fierce beast. It caused Sikong Jian and the others' faces to change drastically. The one who will die is you. Xiangyang's temper was the worst. He furiously said and drew his sword. The sword light was pitch black, as if it could devour all light. It sliced through the air, instantly aiming for the incoming figure. Xikong Jian and Zhou Xian saw Shang Yang make his move and released their palms. They were very clear that there were a total of 32 people who had entered the 4th floor, and the 3 of them were the strongest. Hence, since Shang Yang made his move, that person would die without a doubt. The black sword light shot through the air, but the figure seemed to flicker, and the black sword light disappeared. No, it didn't disappear. It appeared behind the figure and flew away. It was as if the black sword light had pierced through the figure, as if the figure was an illusion. Shang Yang was stunned. Xikong Jian and Zhou Xian were also stunned. Interesting. Shang Yang's lips curled up in a sinister smile. The long and narrow black sword in his hand slashed out. In an instant, a dense black sword light formed a sword net, enveloping the figure. Insignificant skill. An obscure and hoarse voice sounded out. The black sword net instantly shattered, and the silhouette suddenly accelerated, appearing in front of Shang Yang like a ghost. It was so fast that Shang Yang couldn't see it clearly. Shang Yang's eyes widened. He only saw a cold light magnifying in front of him, as if it came from the void. That killing intent caused his entire body to tremble. Scram! Shang Yang roared. Sword chi erupted from his body. His sword was like a shooting star, and his footsteps staggered as he rapidly retreated. The silhouette was like a maggot, twisting and turning, evading Shang Yang's sword strike. The sword strike changed into a horizontal sweep. Shang Yang was sent flying, spitting out a mouthful of blood. He was injured in a single exchange. Xikong Jian and Zhou Xian's eyes widened, their faces filled with astonishment. Quick, attack! Shang Yang landed on the ground and shouted. His voice was filled with fear. This person's strength was too strong. Xikong Jian and Zhou Xian reacted quickly, unsheathing their swords. The 7 swordsmen in Xikong Jian's group also unsheathed their swords, each displaying their sword skills to kill. All of a sudden, the area within 10 meters was filled with a terrifying energy. The silhouette within it was about to be torn apart. Suddenly, the silhouette exploded, turning into countless streaks of light that shot out in all directions. A strange scene occurred. The silhouette appeared beside a beginning Origin Realm swordsman. Sword light shone, and a head flew high into the air. Instant kill. Kill him! One of the Origin Realm swordsman's eyes turned red as he let out a roar. His sword light danced in the air like a meat grinder, leaving no room for escape. Shang Yang took out a pill and swallowed it. His body flashed as he attacked again. 3 Origin Realm swordsmen Deshang and 6 beginning Origin Realm swordsmen teamed up to deal with the mysterious silhouette. Until now, they still hadn't seen the silhouette's true face. 9 genius swordsmen besieged a mysterious person, yet they were unable to take him down. Amidst the flurry of sword lights, another 2 weaker Origin Realm swordsmen were killed by him. This was equivalent to slapping Shang Yang, Xikong Jian, and Zhou Xian in the face, causing them to feel a stinging pain. Purple thunder formless. Zhou Xian yelled as countless purple thunderbolts appeared all over his body. He used a secret art, causing his strength to skyrocket. Shang Yang and Xikong Jian didn't care about anything else as they used their secret arts to increase their strength. The other swordsmen also used their secret arts, suppressing the mysterious silhouette. With a slash, the mysterious silhouette was sent flying. He spat out a mouthful of blood as he crashed into the tombstone. The mysterious silhouette pressed his palm on the tombstone. It was a huge tombstone that was more than 10 meters tall. He injected his sword Yuan into the tombstone. All of a sudden, the tombstone shone brightly, and the tomb behind it began to crack open. Xikong Jian and the other 2 were startled at first, then became furious. This mysterious silhouette dared to do such a thing right under their noses. He was trying to take away the treasures in the tomb. He was looking down on them. Die! With a roar, they used their strongest sword skills. Rumbling shockwaves, hurricanes, heavenly thunder, and darkness descended, destroying everything in its path. The mysterious silhouette couldn't dodge in time and was hit by the three attacks. He was instantly sent flying. However, his body went around the tombstone and grabbed the light that rushed out of the tomb. He immediately ran away. One had to admit that this person was willing to give up his life for the treasures. Damn it! Chase! Sikong Jian's face turned pale. Without any hesitation, he chased after the mysterious silhouette. Zhou Xian and Shang Yang's faces were also extremely gloomy. They didn't expect that the mysterious silhouette would rather take their sword skills than take away the treasures in the tomb. He must be heavily injured right now. He can't run far. Chase! Shang Yang said gloomily as he immediately chased after the mysterious silhouette. Zhou Xian didn't say anything, but he also quickly moved and chased after the mysterious silhouette. The remaining four swordsmen looked at each other, then followed suit. In the blink of an eye, there was only a huge tomb left, standing alone on the vast land. It was a desolate scene. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 524. Another middle-grade grave. Chu Mu muttered to himself as he grabbed the ball of light above the grave. As the ball of light dissipated, a thin book appeared in Chu Mu's hand. Immemorial Scripture. It was a very common name, but after Chu Mu flipped it open, he realized that it was a cultivation method for sword energy. Moreover, it was a middle-grade heaven-level cultivation method. Under normal circumstances, an Origin Realm swordsman would cultivate a top-grade earth-level cultivation method. There were a few who could cultivate a low-grade heaven-level cultivation method. Those who could cultivate a middle-grade heaven-level cultivation method were usually from big factions, such as the geniuses of the top 10 sword sections. Not a bad cultivation method. The sword energy cultivated is more than twice as dense as a normal middle-grade heaven-level cultivation method. It can be considered one of the top middle-grade heaven-level cultivation method. The Azura Sword of Gojoseon commented. Unfortunately, it's useless to me. Chu Mu said as he stored the immemorial scripture into his spatial bracelet. He cultivated the Sky Baron Sword energy. Now that the Sky Baron Sword scripture had reached the low-grade heaven level, although it was not as good as the immemorial scripture, the power of the Sky Baron Sword energy was not any weaker than the sword energy cultivated from the immemorial scripture. Although it was useless to him, he could keep it. Who knows, it might come in handy in the future. Someone is approaching. The Azura Sword of Gojoseon suddenly warned. Chu Mu quickly glanced over and immediately saw a blurry figure rapidly approaching. He instinctively felt a sense of danger as the hair on his neck stood up. Even with Chu Mu's eyesight, he could not see the person's face clearly. It was blurry and ghost-like. The strong sense of danger was like an alarm bell. The sword's soul prototype in Chu Mu's spiritual world also vibrated, as if it was reminding Chu Mu that the person approaching him was a huge threat. Without any hesitation, he attacked with the moon-slaying sword. The dark golden crescent moon instantly pierced through the sky. In the blink of an eye, it crossed a distance of tens of meters and slashed towards the rapidly approaching figure. This person had not expected that Chu Mu would take the initiative to attack. It was so straightforward that he could not dodge in time. Even blocking was very difficult, and he was immediately struck by the moon's slashing blade. If he had been struck by the beheading moon under normal circumstances, although he would have been injured, it would only be a minor injury. However, after being struck by Shang Yang and the others one after another, he was already heavily injured. With a boom, he was sent flying by the beheading moon, blood splattered across the sky. In the next moment, a gray shadow flew out from the body and circled towards Chu Mu. In the blink of an eye, it entered Chu Mu's head. It was as if Chu Mu was frozen in place by a body immobilization technique. His two eyes stared straight ahead without blinking. His face was wooden, like a puppet. The Azura sword of Gojoseon's soul avatar quickly appeared with an anxious expression on its face. It's actually a remnant soul. Now, it's up to him. The gray shadow instantly appeared in Chu Mu's spiritual world. Kiki. What a vast spiritual world. This body, I want it. The gray shadow condensed into a gray human head in Chu Mu's spiritual world. It was a little blurry, and one could barely make out its facial features. Immediately after, the head grew rapidly, and the body and limbs grew out, forming a complete human figure. It was a little blurry. The spiritual world was very important to a swordsman. The larger the spiritual world, the stronger the swordsman's spiritual energy and will. The benefits were very obvious. Sword soul. No. It's the embryonic form of the sword soul. The remnant soul exclaimed in disbelief. You actually have the embryonic form of the sword soul. That's great. That's great. As long as I get your body, I'll only need a few years to recover my previous strength. You're too happy. Chu Mu's voice sounded. A blurry figure slowly appeared in his spiritual world. Soul avatar? That's impossible. You haven't even reached the god condensation realm. How can you condense a soul avatar? The remnant soul was even more incredulous. The soul avatar was the symbol of the god condensation realm. With Chu Mu's current realm, of course, he couldn't condense a soul avatar. However, his soul was very strong, and his spiritual energy was also very strong. At this moment, in his spiritual world, his powerful spiritual energy could barely condense into a form. If it was in the outside world, Chu Mu wouldn't be able to do it. Everything was due to the home field advantage. Even if your spiritual energy is strong enough to condense into a soul avatar, it's still not a real soul avatar. Let me destroy your spiritual energy avatar, shatter your soul, and take control of your body. The remnant soul laughed loudly, as if it had already completely controlled Chu Mu's body. You can try. Chu Mu said leisurely. This was his spiritual world, his home field. He had the advantage, and was very confident. As he spoke, Chu Mu's spiritual avatar waved his hand. The sword soul prototype immediately flew up and turned into a small sword that fell into the hand of Chu Mu's spiritual avatar. Holding the sword, he stood in the spiritual world, and a sharp aura spread out. In the next breath, the illusionary profound sense and the ripping profound sense turned into two flood dragons that rushed toward Chu Mu. One of them circled around the small sword as if it had become one with the small sword, while the other circled around Chu Mu's spiritual avatar, making his spiritual avatar look faintly discernible. Two variant profound sense. You still keep surprising me. The remnant soul didn't seem to be worried at all. Instead, it seemed to be even happier. The more surprising part is yet to come. As soon as Chu Mu's voice fell, his spiritual avatar moved. It flashed like a cloud and appeared in front of the remnant soul, thrusting out his sword. Because this was the spiritual world, this sword didn't have the slightest bit of wind. It was a silent sword that was like a ghost's assassination, causing the remnant soul to be shocked. The remnant soul quickly retreated, condensing a gray sword in its hand and thrusting it out quickly. The remnant soul didn't have any profound sense or sword intent, but it was still a divine soul after all. It was more powerful than Chu Mu's spiritual avatar. Chu Mu had the sword soul prototype, the ripping profound sense, and the illusionary profound sense. With the combination of these three and his unpredictable sword arts, he immediately displayed an astonishing strength. With a few swoosh, 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 Chu Mu forced the remnant soul to continuously retreat and defend. It simply didn't have any chance to counterattack. The sword soul prototype flashed, and the illusionary profound sense was used. The remnant soul's vision blurred, and Chu Mu's sword disappeared. How can your sword arts? Before the remnant soul could finish its words, it was suddenly hit by Chu Mu's sword, causing a wisp of gray aura to dissipate. Like a sculpture, Chu Mu stabbed and slashed with his sword, displaying his sword arts to the fullest. The feeling of displaying sword arts in the spiritual world and in the outside world was completely different. There were almost no restrictions here, and it was very carefree, allowing Chu Mu to display 120% of the power of his sword arts. Wisps of gray aura floated out of the remnant soul's body and dissipated. The remnant soul became more and more blurred, and its power became weaker and weaker. Wait! The remnant soul roared in horror. He finally realized that with his current strength, it was impossible to defeat Chu Mu's spiritual avatar. On the contrary, it was more likely that his remnant soul would be defeated by his opponent, so he had to beg for mercy. If he was in his peak divine soul body, it would be easy to destroy his opponent's spiritual avatar. Chu Mu didn't pay attention to the remnant soul. He raised his sword and slashed down. The extremely sharp, ripping profound sense immediately split the remnant soul in half, causing it to let out an extremely shrill cry. Stone Quake was activated, and the remnant soul that was split in half immediately dissipated. In the state of his spiritual avatar, he couldn't use Mountain Quake at all. Otherwise, his spiritual avatar would collapse first. Fortunately, Stone Quake was enough to deal with the remnant soul. After defeating the remnant soul, Chu Mu's spiritual avatar also dissipated, and everything returned to its original state. After regaining control of his body, Chu Mu saw the Shura sword of Gojoseon's spiritual avatar in front of him. What about the remnant soul? The Shura sword of Gojoseon looked at Chu Mu's eyes and knew that he was safe and sound. I defeated it, Chu Mu said. That's good. The Shura sword of Gojoseon nodded and returned to the dark red sword. Chu Mu walked forward with large strides. When he arrived in front of the corpse, he was immediately stunned. It was Situfeng. Although the corpse looked gray, Chu Mu definitely recognized that it was Situfeng. Maybe the remnant soul in the ancient sword tomb took over his body. The Shura sword of Gojoseon said, in the ancient sword tomb, there are very few remnant souls. It's just that they usually can't appear. There must be a special reason. Chu Mu nodded and checked Situfeng's corpse. He took a top-quality space bracelet from his wrist. Quick, take the ring on his finger. The Shura sword of Gojoseon's tone was very urgent. Ring. Chu Mu's gaze suddenly fell on one of Situfeng's fingers. There was a dark gold ring on it. It looked very ordinary, but Chu Mu still took it off. Senior sword of Gojoseon, this is? This dark gold ring looked like an iron ring. There were some faint lines crisscrossing on it. Looking at it carefully, it gave off a simple and mysterious feeling. This is a space ring. The Shura sword of Gojoseon's tone was still a little excited. Space rings are similar to space bracelets, but even the lowest level space ring is 100 times bigger than a top-quality space bracelet. It can also hold space bracelets and lower-level space rings. In addition, different space rings have different abilities. First, drip your blood on it and mark it with your soul. See how big this space ring is and what abilities it has. After Chu Mu recognized it, his soul entered the space ring to check. He was shocked by the space inside. 1,000 times, it was 1,000 times bigger than a top-quality space bracelet. 8,000 times, that's an intermediate space ring. The Shura sword of Gojoseon exclaimed, the one I used before was only a basic space ring. If you take this intermediate space ring to auction, it might be able to sell for tens of millions of king-grade spirit stones. Tens of millions of king-grade spirit stones. Chu Mu's face was full of shock. One king-grade spirit stone was equivalent to 10 top-quality spirit stones. Tens of millions of king-grade spirit stones were equivalent to hundreds of millions of top-quality spirit stones. If it was converted into upper-grade spirit stones, it would be 1 billion. 1 billion upper-grade spirit stones. Such wealth was at least several times or even 10 times more than the Heaven Burial Sword sect. This made Chu Mu's heart beat several times faster. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 525. After calming himself down, Chu Mu covered the space ring with his mind. According to the method that the Shura sword of Gojoseon had told him, he could sense the ability of the space ring. Increase the speed of the sword by 10%. Chu Mu tried to stab out with his right hand that was wearing the space ring. He found that under the effect of a strange power, it was much faster than before. 10%. For a swordsman like Chu Mu who could draw his sword at an astonishing speed, the increase was very obvious. Then, 2 jade boxes appeared in Chu Mu's hands. They were the only things in the intermediate space ring. When the jade boxes were opened, a fragrant smell wafted out. Inside each of the 2 jade boxes was a round pill the size of a longan. One was purple and the other was silver. Whether it was the purple or silver pill, they were all very translucent. It was as if the outside was transparent, while the inside was the true purple and silver. It looked very deep and noble, and there were traces of unique fluctuations spreading out. When Chu Mu looked carefully, he could see that there were countless mysterious patterns on the surface. It's actually the soul-cleansing mystery pill and the sword intent pill. The Shura sword of Gojoseon's voice went from low to high as he exclaimed again. Senior, what are the soul-cleansing mystery pill and the sword intent pill? Hearing the Shura sword of Gojoseon's exclamation, Chu Mu immediately understood the extraordinariness of these 2 pills. The most important use of the soul-cleansing mystery pill is to make it easier for a swordsman to fuse different mysteries. It can also increase the degree of comprehension of the mysteries. Azura Sword King quickly said, Aren't you working hard on how to fuse the fire and water mysteries? With this soul-cleansing mystery pill, you will definitely be able to fuse the fire and water mysteries in a short period of time. Moreover, with your comprehension, you will definitely be able to fuse the fire and water mysteries. As for the sword intent pill, you can tell from its name that it is related to sword intent. After consuming it, it can increase one's sword intent for a short period of time. The Azura sword of Gojoseon said, I have to say, your luck is really too good. This remnant soul must have occupied Sidu Feng's body and entered the 4th floor after you. Then, he opened a king-level grave and obtained this intermediate spatial ring. These 2 pills should be in the spatial ring. When he obtained the spatial ring, he must have gone through a fierce battle. He was severely injured and attacked by you. He abandoned his body and planned to use his remnant soul to take over your body. Unexpectedly, you defeated him. In the end, everything belongs to you. The Azura sword of Gojoseon's analysis was pretty close to the truth. I'll keep these 2 pills first. After leaving the ancient sword tomb, I'll find a safe place to consume them. Chu Mu's heart burned with passion, feeling happy for the rapid increase in his strength. Someone's coming. The Azura sword of Gojoseon reminded him again. Chu Mu quickly closed the jade box and put it into the spatial ring. The other spatial bracelets were also put into the spatial ring. At this time, the sound of wind breaking rang out as a figure rapidly approached. So, it's you. The newcomer was Sikong Jian. He saw Chu Mu and the corpse at his feet and immediately understood. Die! Sikong Jian unsheathed his sword. A cyan sword light tore through the void and exploded, turning into a roaring hurricane. An incomparably terrifying sword intent was contained within it. The unparalleled sharpness made Chu Mu feel like he was going to be minced into dust. The protective sword aura on his body was directly shattered. At least 70% sword intent. This Sikong Jian has the strength of a sword venerable. Chu Mu's heart shook. He quickly slashed out the beheading moon and used the inverse space step. He instantly appeared on the other side and slashed out another beheading moon. In the blink of an eye, the beheading moon was shattered by the hurricane. The hurricane roared as the other beheading moon slashed at Sikong Jian from the side. Not even 40% sword intent. Insignificant skill, and you dare to embarrass yourself in front of me. Sikong Jian said with disdain. He slashed out another beheading moon. The cyan sword light tore through the void, and the hurricane roared again. The beheading moon could only carry 39% sword intent. It was already fixed and could not be changed. However, Chu Mu had yet to create a sword skill that could carry more sword intent. As of now, the beheading moon was his most commonly used offensive sword skill. As for beheading metal and killing point, the requirements were higher. One needed to be close to the target and use them in close combat. Their power was several times stronger than the beheading moon. The beheading moon was shattered again. Chu Mu's figure seemed to be shuttling through the void. He used the flying swan phantom steps to the extreme. Together with the inverse space step, he avoided the hurricane's attack and appeared behind Sikong Jian. The eight-sided sky desolate sword stabbed out. The sword tip of the eight-sided sky desolate sword instantly pierced through Sikong Jian's protective sword aura and touched his king-grade armor. Sikong Jian was shocked at first, then disdainful. Although this level of attack could break through his protective sword aura, it would definitely not be able to break through his king-grade armor and cause him the slightest damage. Just as Sikong Jian was about to slash back, Chu Mu's pupils shot out a strong light. Killing point. The mountain-piercing energy instantly pierced through the king-grade armor and directly pierced into Sikong Jian's body. Sikong Jian only felt as if his body had been pierced by a sword. A tearing pain swept through his body, causing him to twitch all over. The sword that he was about to slash back suddenly stopped, and his face changed greatly. Chu Mu's sword changed from a stab to a slash. All of the power was gathered into the eight-sided heavenly desolate swords. Not a single bit leaked out. Even the surrounding light felt like it was being absorbed. As a result, the space around the sword edge became a faintly discernible darkness. Beheading metal. The beheading metal that contained the sword intent, tearing profound, and mountain-shaking energy. In terms of pure power, not only was it better than beheading moon, it was also better than killing point. Chu Mu believed that once beheading metal hit Sikong Jian, it would be enough to cut through his king-grade armor, and then cut his body in half. His heart was beating wildly, and his hair was standing on end. A chill ran down his spine, and a strong sense of crisis rushed into his soul. Sikong Jian was almost scared out of his wit. Without caring about his elegance, he shouted loudly, "Open!" All of a sudden, a jade pendant hanging on Sikong Jian's neck emitted a strong light. In just a fraction of a second, it was even faster than Chu Mu's sword. The light covered his entire body and covered the king-grade armor, forming a layer of transparent light. With a cracking sound, beheading metal landed on the transparent light. The transparent light was instantly shattered, and beheading metal's power was also exhausted. It landed on the king-grade armor and was repelled by a force. Sikong Jian seized the opportunity and slashed at Chu Mu. Chu Mu took a step back and performed the inverse space step, appearing on the other side. Sikong Jian's sword missed, and then he slashed again. Beheading moon attacked again. Insignificant skill, useless against me. Sikong Jian roared and shattered the beheading moon. After the beheading moon, there was a small sword light. It was like a falling star, and its horrifying aura instantly locked onto Sikong Jian. Sikong Jian's body froze, and he could not move. Sikong Jian's eyes were wide open, and his face was full of shock. His pupils were filled with disbelief and fear as he watched the star-like sword light shoot toward him. In just a moment, Sikong Jian's mind seemed to have stopped, and the meteor sword yuan pierced through his forehead, shattering his soul. The meteor sword yuan shrank again, and with a turn, it returned to Chu Mu's spiritual world. It had lost about 1/10 of its original power. In other words, for sword artists like Sikong Jian, the meteor sword yuan could kill 9 more before it dissipated completely. With a bang, Sikong Jian's body fell heavily on the ground, splashing up a lot of dust, intertwining with Sidu Feng's body. Chu Mu acted quickly. He took away Sikong Jian's king-grade sword, armor, and spatial bracelet, and threw them into his intermediate spatial ring. He then performed the flying swan illusionary steps and inverse space step alternately, disregarding the consumption of his sword yuan, and quickly left in another direction. Chu Mu and Sikong Jian's fight was very short, not even 10 breaths of time. Originally, Sikong Jian's strength was above Chu Mu's, and as long as he used it properly, he would be able to kill Chu Mu. However, he ultimately died under Chu Mu's meteor sword energy. After a few breaths of time, Chu Mu disappeared without a trace. After another 5 breaths of time, another figure quickly approached and appeared next to Sidu Feng and Sikong Jian's corpses. Looking down, his face was full of shock. This person was Shang Yang. After 3 breaths, Zhou Xian also quickly caught up and appeared beside Shang Yang. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly saw the corpses under his feet. Looking closely, his pupils shrank, and he was so shocked that he could not make a sound. 2 corpses were lying on the ground. One of them looked like he had been dead for a long time. They did not know who he was, but they could vaguely recognize his face. It should be the person who had taken their sword skills and taken away the treasures in the tomb. The other one was Sikong Jian, who had fought against them together not long ago. Shang Yang and Zhou Xian suddenly felt a burst of cold air invading their bodies. It was a creepy feeling, as if it wanted to freeze their blood. Sikong Jian was lying on the ground, facing the sky. His pupils were white as he stared at the sky, as if he was questioning the heavens. In this kind of environment, that kind of gaze and silent questioning made one's hair stand on end. Especially the wound on Sikong Jian's forehead. It was only the size of a toothpick, and it went all the way to the back of his head. Red and white liquid mixed together and flowed out. It was obvious that he had been killed in one strike. The other person was even stronger. He could fight against them together, and even slightly stronger. But now, he had also died here. There were many wounds on his body, but none of them were fatal. It was impossible to tell the cause of death. Shang Yang and Zhou Xian were even more horrified. Originally, there were only 32 people who had entered the 4th level of the ancient sword tomb, and they were the 3 strongest. But suddenly, there was an existence stronger than the 3 of them, which was out of their expectations. They did not expect that there would be an even more terrifying and mysterious existence. He did not kill Sikong Jian, but even the mysterious person who was stronger than the 3 of them together was killed, and everything was taken away. If they had arrived earlier than Sikong Jian, wouldn't they be the ones to die? At least a peak-level sword venerable expert. Zhou Xian's throat was dry, and he struggled to speak. "Go, leave this place immediately," Shang Yang said immediately. His face was pale and filled with fear. The 2 of them left in a panic. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 526. What a great harvest! Chu Mu almost laughed out loud. Whether it was Sidu Feng's or Sikong Jian's spatial bracelet, they both had a large number of treasures. Most of them were brought in by themselves, while the rest were obtained from opening the 4th level of the ancient sword tomb. Excluding Chu Mu's harvest, the 2 of them had obtained more than 10 treasures from the 4th level of the ancient sword tomb. Each of them was extremely valuable, but unfortunately, they were all useless to Chu Mu. No matter what, Chu Mu's harvest from the 4th level of the ancient sword tomb was extremely huge. It allowed him to leave most of the Origin Realm swordsmen in the dust. Even the powerful sword venerable level swordsman might not be able to compare to Chu Mu's wealth. Just a middle-grade spatial ring was enough to allow Chu Mu's wealth to surpass many sword venerables. Soon, the opening of the ancient sword tomb ended. Even though Chu Mu did not obtain anything else, what he obtained was already enough. Chu Mu's body was enveloped by a force that he could not resist. Even the Azura sword of Gojoseon could not do anything to it. All he could feel was a blur in front of his eyes as the world spun and time reversed. Both of his feet could not touch the ground. When he landed, all he could see was an endless expanse of yellow sand that covered the sky. It turned out that he had already left the ancient sword tomb and appeared in the fiery wind desert. Looking around, other than the endless yellow sand, there was no one else to be seen. After the ancient sword tomb closed, the swordsmen who were still alive would be sent out of the ancient sword tomb. However, when they were sent out of the ancient sword tomb, they would not be sent to a fixed location. In short, as long as they were in the fiery wind desert, they could be anywhere. If they were lucky, they would appear in the outer region of the fiery wind desert and be able to leave quickly. If they were unlucky, they would appear in the center of the fiery wind desert. It would be extremely difficult to leave. Chu-Mu didn't know where he was in the wind-fire great desert. Sweeping his eyes over the place, he could only see boundless yellow sand rolling endlessly. The air was filled with an incomparably hot aura. It was as if there was an incomparably huge furnace hidden behind the yellow sand. The raging flames were constantly roasting. Suddenly, Chu-Mu felt a trace of danger. He quickly used his footwork to move to the side, leaving behind an afterimage. In an instant, a terrifying torrent rushed out from under the yellow sand. With a bang, it directly shattered the afterimage and rushed up to 100 meters in the air, causing the surrounding temperature to increase by dozens of degrees. Shockingly, it was an earth fire. What a dangerous place! Chu-Mu thought to himself. The power of the earth fire was too tyrannical. With his current strength, if he came into contact with it, even if he didn't die, he would be severely injured. With a thought, his body soared into the air, reaching a height of several hundred meters. He looked into the distance, intending to take a look, but all he saw was endless yellow sand. He couldn't see anything else at all. Looks like I can only rely on luck. Chu-Mu had no choice. He randomly chose a direction and quickly flew. The wind and fire desert was indeed huge. However, if an Origin Realm swordsman wanted to, they could still cross it if they spent some time. Of course, the closer one was to the center, the more dangerous the wind and fire desert would be. Even an Origin Realm swordsman would have a high chance of dying. Therefore, unless there was a special need, an Origin Realm swordsman wouldn't cross the wind and fire desert. With a boom, Chu-Mu stirred up a powerful storm and shot forward like a rocket. His body was like a stream of light, unbelievably fast. Without the suppression of the strange pressure from the ancient sword tomb, Chu-Mu's speed was even faster than before. Because his sword origin had truly reached the beginning of the Origin Realm, his flying speed had increased as well. Under the clear sky, a figure flew past at high speed, leaving behind a trail of dazzling smoke and fire. It was like thousands of fireworks had bloomed, quickly disappearing into the distance. After flying for about half a day, Chu-Mu still couldn't see the end. With a glance, the desert was still covered in yellow sand, and it was extremely hot. Suddenly, he saw 3 small black dots on the ground. He was startled at first, but his intuition told him that he should go down and take a look. Perhaps he could find something. He quickly descended and saw 3 swordsmen fighting against a sand beast together. The 3 swordsmen didn't look very old, around 23 or 24 years old. There were 2 males and 1 female. The female was at the peak of the Qi High Realm, while the 2 males were at the peak of the Qi High Realm, Deshang. The sand beast they were fighting was at the peak of the Qi High Realm. In theory, the sand beast was weaker than them, but this was the wind-fire desert. The sand beast had the home field advantage, and with its immortal body, the battle was extremely intense. The sand beast couldn't kill the 3 of them, but the 3 of them couldn't really kill the sand beast either. The battle was extremely intense. Half of the sand beast's body was cut in half by the female swordsman's sword. Countless yellow sand exploded like bullets in all directions, forcing the 3 swordsmen to quickly dodge. The other half of the sand beast's body suddenly clawed at one of the male swordsmen. The male swordsman was in a hurry to deal with the sudden explosion of yellow sand, and had no time to dodge the claw. It seemed that the male swordsman was about to die under the sharp claw of the sand beast. The other two swordsmen also showed a look of despair. Chu-mu made his move. With a point of his finger, the air rippled and the sand beast's claw exploded. Immediately after, a sword pressure descended and directly suppressed the sand beast. The sand beast's body disintegrated, leaving only a sand core floating in the air, unable to reform the sand. A sand beast in the Qi High realm was not Chu-mu's opponent at all. Luckily escaping with his life, the male swordsman was first astonished before becoming happy. The female swordsman quickly lifted her head to look at the sky and landed on Chu-mu. Once she saw that there was no sword aura on Chu-mu's back, but his wings were still floating in the air. Her expression changed and she quickly gave a deep bow. Simultaneously, she used a respectful tone to say, "Many thanks to Senior for saving us. Otherwise, the three of us very likely would have died here." "No need to be so polite." Chu-mu's figure landed, and he stood upright like a sword on the yellow sand. Sweeping his eyes over them, he found that the female swordsman's looks weren't bad, and the two male swordsmen were rather handsome. They didn't seem to be evil people. "Which direction can we leave the wind-fire desert?" Although she was surprised by Chu-mu's question, the female swordsman quickly answered, "Senior, if you keep going in this direction, you can leave the wind-fire desert and enter the Jinsha County." Jinsha County. Chu-mu nodded. He didn't expect it to be the Tianfeng County. However, Chu-mu didn't care. Although it was his first time hearing about the Jinsha County, and he had never been there before, as long as he was there, Chu-mu would have a way to get to the sky-connecting mountain. "Senior, we are from the Li family of the Jinsha County. If you have any orders in the Jinsha County, we are willing to do anything for you." "We will do anything for you," the female swordsman quickly said. She knew that Chu-mu was at least an Origin Realm swordsman. Although he looked very young, his age shouldn't be too different from theirs. However, in this world there was never a lack of geniuses. Even if there weren't many of them, there would always be some swordsmen who could reach the Origin Realm before the age of 30. Their talents were far superior to ordinary people. Moreover, if they were able to reach the Origin Realm at a young age, they would be able to maintain their appearance for a longer period of time. In other words, the speed of aging would be greatly reduced by at least 10 times. This was also why some Origin Realm swordsmen who looked like they were in their 40s were actually more than 100 years old, or even 200 or 300 years old. No matter what kind of situation Chu-mu was in their eyes, Chu-mu was a powerful existence that they couldn't reach. He was an existence that they had to look up to. Just this female swordsman's sword chi had reached the peak of the Qi High realm. However, she was very clear that she only barely had the strength of a sword master. In terms of accumulation, she was far from enough. Even if she had accumulated enough, it would be extremely difficult for her to reach the Origin realm. She might not even be able to reach the Origin realm after a few decades. In her entire family, there wasn't a single Origin realm swordsman. Therefore, to them and their family, the Origin realm was a superior existence. If she could gain the favor of an Origin realm swordsman, it would be a good thing for her family. The Li family? Chu-mu had a flash of inspiration. Has the Li family always been in the Jinsha region? Senior, as far as I know, the Li family was not originally in the Jinsha region. We only moved here about 20 years ago. Although the female swordsman didn't understand why Chu-mu would ask such a question, she still answered respectfully. Chu-mu's eyes lit up and asked again, "Do you know where the Li family was originally located?" Senior, I only know that the Li family moved to the Jinsha region about 20 years ago. As for where we moved from, only the elders in the family know. The female swordsman answered carefully and quickly added, "If Senior wants to know more about the history of the Li family, you are welcome to be our guest. The Li family would be honored." "Do you want to go back now?" Chu-mu thought for a moment and asked. He had been entrusted by the great Kuan Sword Mansion's mansion master, Li Daoyuan, to find the Li family and provide them with some help depending on the situation. However, he had never met them. Now, he had met these three swordsmen. Maybe they weren't, but maybe they were. Since it wouldn't take much time, Chu Mu decided to go to the Li family in the Jinsha region to see if they were the real deal. Senior is willing to go to our Li family. The female swordsman and the two male swordsmen were immediately overjoyed. If you don't have anything else, you can go now. Chu Mu smiled. Okay. What could be more important than Senior visiting our Li family? The female swordsman quickly said. She couldn't hide the smile on her face. She quickly turned around and spread out her sword chi wings, soaring into the sky. The other two male swordsmen also quickly spread out their sword chi wings. Although it would consume a lot of sword chi and would require elixirs to replenish, it was a great honor to be able to invite a primary realm swordsman to their home. It was worth it, very worth it. Chu Mu also soared into the sky and followed behind the three swordsmen. They flew in the direction of the Jinsha region. In his heart, he hoped that this was the Li family that the great Kuan Sword Mansion's mansion master had mentioned. Otherwise, he wouldn't know where to look. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 527. Sir, please take a seat. The Li family master's face was full of joy as he gestured with his hand. Although he looked to be in his 40s, he still performed the greeting of a junior, showing great respect for Chu Mu. Beside him were four other elders around 50 to 60 years old. Each of them had a face full of respect. Chu Mu glanced at them and checked their cultivation. None of them were in the origin realm, nor were they in the Qi High realm. All of them were in the 9th transformation realm. There were a total of 5 of them. The family head, Li Mingxin, was at the 5th revolution of the 9th revolution realm. The other 4 elders were at the 5th and 6th revolution of the 9th revolution realm, respectively. Such a family could be considered a very powerful family in the Great Kuan dynasty. However, such a family was very weak in the central main sword region. The astral realm was a symbol. Any force without an astral realm swordsman would be considered a small force that couldn't even be mentioned in public. Not now. Let me ask you, where did the Li family move from? Chu Mu asked directly as he stared at Li Mingxin. Any change in Li Mingxin's expression was within his grasp. Sir, our Li family was originally located in the Pingyang County of the Xiqing Prefecture. According to the family history, our Li family was once the number 1 family in the Pingyang County. However, there were some unforeseen events that caused our family to decline. Li Mingxin thought for a while and didn't dare to hide anything. The reason why he called Chu Mu Sir instead of Senior was because he could tell that Chu Mu was definitely not over 30 years old. Origin realm swordsmen under 30 years old were usually geniuses with extraordinary backgrounds. Therefore, it was very appropriate to call him Sir. As for hiding the origin of the Li family, there was actually no need to do so. The once powerful Li family had declined to its current state. There weren't any treasures in the family that were worth the attention of an origin realm swordsman. Moreover, as long as one was willing, one could easily find out the origin of the Li family. Is there a person named Li Daoyuan in the family history of the Li family? Chu Mu was overjoyed in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. My lord actually knows. Li Mingxin and the 4 elders widened their eyes in disbelief. Sir, ancestor Li Daoyuan was the head of our Li family more than 100 years ago, Li Mingxin hurriedly said. That would be great. Chu Mu nodded, making Li Mingxin and the 4 elders even more confused. However, Chu Mu did not explain too much and only said, Senior Li Daoyuan is still alive, but he is not in the central sword region. This time, I was entrusted by him to look for the Li family, but to no avail. Unexpectedly, I met a descendant of the Li family by chance. Overall, it's not a big deal. However, I plan to stay in the Li family for a period of time. Convenient, convenient, of course it's convenient, Li Mingxin hurriedly said. The four elders were even more elated. Although they didn't know what Chu Mu's true cultivation level was, they were sure that he was at the origin realm. Even if it was only temporary, it was still an honor for the Li family that such a master was willing to stay with them. Moreover, this Sir's words were very clear. He knew ancestor Li Daoyuan more than 100 years ago and was entrusted by him to look for the Li family. There must be something that they didn't know. Sir, may I know where ancestor Li Daoyuan is now? Li Mingxin hurriedly asked in joy. Senior Li Daoyuan is temporarily unable to return due to some reasons. As for now, he is currently the mansion master of the Great Kuan Sword Mansion in the Eastern Sword region. Chu Mu thought for a moment and said, I will be staying with the Li family for a period of time. If there is anything that the Li family can't solve, you can tell me. I will deal with it at my discretion. You can also send a few talented disciples to my place. I will guide them in their cultivation based on the situation. When Li Daoyuan entrusted Chu Mu to help the Li family in a situation where his life wasn't in danger, Li Daoyuan's meteor sword energy had helped Chu Mu survive 2 life and death crises. Moreover, it had brought Chu Mu a great harvest. As a result, Chu Mu owed Li Daoyuan a great favor. Naturally, he couldn't just casually help the Li family. What he had said was only a part of the help. As for the rest, it would depend on the situation. Under the premise that there wouldn't be any obvious losses, Li Daoyuan would help as much as he could. Even the little help that Chu Mu had mentioned made Li Mingxin and the 4 elders overjoyed. Currently, the Li family was at the bottom of the list among all the forces in the Jinsha region. Naturally, they hoped to increase their strength in all aspects. If some of the disciples in the family received guidance from a primary realm swordsman, their strength would definitely increase greatly. Over time, the family's strength would increase. If someone was accepted as a disciple by this expert, it would be a joyous occasion for the Li family. Soon, Chu Mu's residence was arranged. It was the best and largest courtyard in the Li family. It was called Bee Mountain Courtyard. There was a fake mountain and pond in the courtyard. Beside the pond was a small pavilion. In addition, there were a few rooms. The environment was beautiful and very suitable for living. Li Mingxin even proposed to hold a grand banquet for Chu Mu, but was rejected by Chu Mu. These were all empty promises. Li Mingxin and the others didn't dare to disturb him too much. They said their goodbyes and left. Chu Mu sat in the pavilion and looked at the blue sky. During the conversation with Li Mingxin, he had fully understood the current strength of the Li family. The most powerful ones were the 9th Transformation Realm Swordsman, which was the Li family's patriarch, the 4 elders, and the Grand Elder. When the Li family first moved here, he began to break through to the 9th Transformation Realm and went into seclusion. It had been more than 20 years and he still hadn't come out. In addition, there were 6 attendants. They were all at the 9th Transformation Realm, but the highest was only at the 3rd Transformation Realm. In the Li family, there were only a little more than 100 people. There were 11 9th Transformation Realm swordsmen. After that, there were 33 Qi High swordsmen. Most of the rest were at the Qi Refining Realm. There were a few who were still very young. They were either at the Sword Qi realm or had not started cultivating yet. Among the younger generation of the Li family, there were 3 people with the most talent. The first was the female swordsman who brought Chu Mu here, Li Kaitong. She was 24 years old and had reached the peak of the Qi High realm last year. The second was the male swordsman, Li Kaitao. He was 25 years old and had reached the peak of the Qi High realm a year ago. The third was Li Mingxin's son, Li Zhen. He was 18 years old and had reached the Qi High realm half a year ago. Chu Mu couldn't help but sigh. The Li family had really fallen. In a bedroom decorated in an ancient style, Chu Mu sat cross-legged on the bed, expelling all distracting thoughts. Then, Chu Mu took out a jade box from his space ring. He opened the jade box and inside was a deep silver pill, the sword will pill. Chu Mu planned to use the sword will pill to refine his sword will and increase his sword will. After adjusting his qi to its peak, Yi Chen threw the sword will pill into his mouth, and it melted instantly. He swallowed it and swallowed it. It went down his throat and into his stomach. It turned into a clear stream of medicinal power that rushed up and entered his mind. In a split second, Chu Mu entered a strange state. Other than the sword will, there was nothing else. This feeling was as if other than the sword will, everything else was isolated. In the whole world, there was only the sword will. In this state, Chu Mu's perception of the sword will increased tenfold. His understanding of the sword will also increased tenfold. Sword will, sword will. What is sword will? All kinds of realizations suddenly surged in his mind. Traces of sharpness gushed out from Chu Mu's body, cutting the surrounding air and making sizzling sounds. The strange thing was that the sharp sword will didn't leave his body. Instead, it wrapped around Chu Mu's body and flowed like a fish, as if it was protecting Chu Mu's body. Chu Mu's sword will increased again. Starting from 45% before entering the ancient sword tomb, Chu Mu's sword will was already at 45%. After that, he didn't have any time to cultivate and comprehend in the ancient sword tomb, so his sword will stopped at 45% and didn't increase at all. Now, under the effects of the sword will pill, Chu Mu's sword will had reached 46% in just 10 breaths, and it was still increasing. 47%, 48%. The increase in sword will became more difficult the further one progressed. It often required more time. To be a true swordsman, it was impossible to not have sword will. Just sword will alone wasn't enough. One had to have enough cultivation and at least one ultimacy. A sword skill was only a complete sword skill after fusing the mysteries of sword origin and sword intent. Only then could the true power of the sword skill be unleashed to the fullest. As a result, whether it was cultivation, sword intent, or mysteries, they all required time to cultivate and comprehend. Just one couldn't make a swordsman truly powerful. They needed to advance together. That was the way of the king. As a result, every increase in sword intent required a longer period of time and a higher degree of difficulty. This was because the swordsman had to be distracted. Now, because of the sword will pill, Chu Mu's sword will had increased by leaps and bounds. Increase, increase, and increase. Soon, in just 60 breaths, Chu Mu's sword will had increased from 45% to 50%, and it had reached the peak of 50%. It was just a little bit away from 51%. At this time, the sword will pill's effects were exhausted. Chu Mu only felt that the feeling of being isolated to the point where only sword will was left had disappeared, and he had returned to his original state. In the sword soul prototype in his spiritual world, the sword will that was flowing became more solid, causing the sword soul prototype to look more solid. It's a pity that there's only one sword will pill. If there were a few more, I might be able to increase my sword will to 70%, and directly have the qualifications to challenge a sword venerable and become a sword venerable, Chu Mu thought to himself. However, I only need 10 days to half a month to comprehend a sword intent that is close to 51%. Then, I will be able to reach 51%, and its power will be even greater. With the support of the embryonic form of the sword soul, my current 50% sword intent will be comparable to a normal 60% sword intent. After I consume the soul-clearing profound pill, I will be able to fuse the water profound with the fire profound and create a new sword move. At that time, its power will be extremely shocking. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidien.com to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 528. Thank you for your guidance. In the courtyard, Li Kaitong saluted Chu Mu with a face full of admiration. Chu Mu nodded and waved his hand. Li Kaitong turned around and left reluctantly. It had been 10 days since he arrived at the Li family. Chu Mu had used the sword intent pill and increased his sword intent to 50%. Now it had broken through to 51%, making it even more powerful. As for the soul cleansing pill, Chu Mu had also used it. The original 20% of the water and fire profound had increased to 30%. Also, Chu Mu had successfully found the matching point and completed the initial fusion. Next, he would need to spend more time to understand and achieve a balance through the matching point. Then, he would be able to completely fuse the water and fire profound together and explode with unparalleled power. Other than his own training, the Li family had also sent Li Kaitong over to receive guidance from Chu Mu. Now that Chu Mu had reached the origin realm, he had set his sights higher. It was easy for him to guide a Qi high sword artist, especially when it came to sword skills. He had pointed out the flaws in Li Caitong's sword skills and improved them. Senior Chu really is amazing. My current swordsmanship is at least twice as powerful as it was 10 days ago. Even Li Kaitao is no match for me. Li Kaitong thought to herself as she left Bishan courtyard. She couldn't help but feel a burst of joy and excitement. In just 10 days, the power of her sword skills had doubled. This was something unimaginable in the past. Zhen, quickly wake up. Li Mingxin hurriedly stuffed a medicinal pill into the mouth of a youth. After circulating his qi to dissolve the medicinal effects, he anxiously stared at the youth on the chair and anxiously shouted. The young man's face was similar to Li Mingxin's. At this moment, his robe was torn and stained with blood. His face was pale and he looked like he was on the verge of death. After a while, the pill dissolved. The young man's eyelids trembled and he opened his eyes. Li Mingxin was immediately overjoyed. The 4 elders and a few attendants were also overjoyed. As a declining family, the Li family had a unique trait: unity. Li Zhen was also a genius of the clan. His talent was above that of Li Kaitao and Li Kaitong. Naturally, they didn't want anything to happen to him. At this moment, a burst of noise came from outside, followed by a blood-curdling scream, followed by a series of footsteps, causing the faces of everyone in the hall to change greatly. "What's going on?" The second elder's complexion changed as he shouted. "The Li clan is really impressive." A light laugh was heard. Then, 2 figures walked over. The leader was a white-clothed youth. He had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes, and he was extremely handsome. His skin was as white as mutton fat, and he could make thousands of women scream. His left hand held a folding fan with 10 beauties drawn on it, and he gently waved it. There was an indescribable elegance about him, and behind him was a middle-aged man. That middle-aged man was dressed like a sword guard. His face was expressionless like a rock, but his eyes were shining with a sharp light. His body emitted an intense aura that was extremely sharp, cutting through the surrounding air, causing people's hearts to tremble. "May I ask who you are?" When Li Mingxin and the others saw the middle-aged sword guard, their faces suddenly changed. They cupped their hands towards the white-clothed youth and asked in a respectful manner, "My surname is Long. You can call me Third Young Master." The white-robed young man spoke frankly with assurance. His gaze swept across the faces of the Li clan members and finally landed on Li Zhen. Li Zhen looked at the white-robed young man with eyes filled with anger. Third Young Master Long smiled and said, "You are really lucky you actually didn't die." Third Young Master Long. The Li clan members all gasped. They had been in the Jinsha region for more than 20 years. How could they not know about the Long clan? The largest clan in the Jinsha region was the Shentu clan, followed by the Fan clan, and then the Long clan. Don't underestimate the Long clan. In the entire Jinsha region, there were more than 100 clans. To be able to be ranked third meant that they were extremely powerful. The Long clan was a powerful clan that had existed for more than 1,000 years. It was said that there were at least 10 Origin Realm warriors in the clan. Although the Li clan was now at the bottom of the list of clans in the Jinsha region, they were once prosperous in the Pingyang region. They also had many Origin Realm warriors in the clan. They knew that the so-called, at least 10, was just an imaginary number. The fake news that was leaked to the outside world said that there were at least 20 or even more. The difference between the Li clan and the Long clan was like the difference between a Qi transformation realm swordsman and an Origin realm swordsman. There was no comparison. If the Long clan was willing, they only needed to send out one Origin realm swordsman, and it would be enough to slaughter the entire Li clan. They were also aware of the various rumors regarding the third young master of the Long family. He was a talented swordsman who was 25 years old this year and had obtained the title of Sword Hero 3 years ago. He was very powerful and had astonishing talent. The middle-aged swordsman beside him was a 9th Revolution Realm 8th Revolution swordsman who was stronger than anyone in the Li family. Third young master's visit brings light to the Li clan. Li Mingxin quickly said. It is indeed the Li clan's honor for me to come here personally. However, there is an even greater honor waiting for your Li clan. The third young master long closed his fan. A mysterious smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, which made the Li family members feel that something was wrong. The third young master Long's face turned cold. He pointed at Li Zhen and shouted, "This lowly bastard dared to offend me on the street. He tried to kill me, but he didn't know that he was stupid. He was as insignificant as an ant. He was sent flying by my sword, but he didn't die. It's good that he didn't die. He was lucky to be alive. Remember my kindness. Now I'll give you 2 choices." The third young master Long opened his fan again and waved it. First, the Li clan will be annihilated. I don't think you will choose this. Second? Li Mingxin's face turned gloomy. Second, very simple. Give me a satisfactory compensation. The third young master Long said. I wonder how the third young master wants the Li clan to compensate? Li Mingxin said. He felt very sullen. This was the result of being weaker than others. He was prepared to agree as long as the compensation wasn't too big. Not much. Just 10,000 spirit stones. The third young master Long chuckled. Li Mingxin and the others subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief. 10,000 spirit stones was indeed not much. They didn't notice that the third young master Long said spirit stones and didn't mention the grade of spirit stones. As for the grade, I don't think you can take out king grade spirit stones, so I'll take out supreme grade spirit stones. 10,000 supreme grade spirit stones. What do you think? I'm kind enough, third young master Long said. 10,000 spirit stones. The Li clan's eyes widened and exclaimed. 10,000 top-grade spirit stones were equivalent to 100,000 high-grade spirit stones. With the Li family's current situation, they might be able to gather 100,000 high-grade spirit stones even if they sold everything they had. The result would be that the Li family would completely decline. They wouldn't even have the money to eat, let alone cultivate. Third young master, we can't take out 10,000 spirit stones. An elder exclaimed. Can't take it out? Then let's annihilate your clan. The third young master Long sneered. He waved his hand and said to the middle-aged sword guard behind him, Long Jiu, kill without mercy. Yes. The middle-aged sword guard's voice was extremely cold and murderous. He unsheathed his sword, and the sword chi was extremely sharp. The sword will wantonly cut the air into pieces. It made people feel like they were being executed by 1,000 cut. The Li clan's faces changed drastically and they all unsheathed their swords. The murderous intent filled the entire Li clan's mansion. Everyone in the Li clan was shrouded in the murderous intent. Those with weaker cultivation were directly paralyzed and foamed at the mouth. He had the strength of a 9th transformation realm 8 transformation realm and was from a large family like the Long family. He was extremely powerful, and was not someone the Li family could compare to. Even if Li Mingxin and the other 9th transformation realm swordsmen joined forces, they would not be his match. In an instant, The middle-aged sword guard slashed with his sword. This slash was like splitting a mountain. The tables and chairs in the hall were all shattered. The ground cracked. The Lee clan's black hair danced wildly. They only felt that their bodies were about to be split open. There was no way to block it. The power of this slash was too strong. There was no way to block it at all. But the Lee clan wouldn't just sit there and wait for death. One by one, they slashed with their sword and used their sword techniques to resist. With a loud bang, the hall was shattered. The broken walls fell and countless cracks appeared on the ground. The Lee clan's people were all sent flying, vomiting blood. On the other hand, Long Jio's body only shook slightly. He wasn't hurt at all. The difference in strength between the two sides was too great. Long Jio was at least 2 transformation realm higher than the Lee clan's people. In terms of sword will and esoteric meaning, he was also much better than the Lee clan's people. Moreover, the grade of his sword technique was higher. Under the combination of the three, the quality of the sword he used was better. It wasn't surprising that he could injure the Lee clan's people. Kill! With a fierce shout, Long Jio slashed with his sword again. The huge sword light seemed like it could split a mountain and slash towards the Lee clan's people in the hall. How dare you! A thunderous roar sounded. Following that, a figure seemed to appear out of thin air. He flew over and slashed with his sword. Immediately, the mountain-splitting sword light was countered. With another slash, Long Jio was pushed back. He groaned as blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. There was a sword wound on his chest. Who are you? How dare you cause trouble in my clan? After repelling Dragon 9 with one sword strike, a figure appeared. It was an old man who looked to be in his 60s. His body was strong and powerful, and his hair was angry. His aura was threatening. Peak of Transformation Realm. Long Jio wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and stared at the old man. Who are you? Third young master Long's eyes flashed with a trace of fear. Lee clan's Grand Elder Lee Tian-he. The old man said. Lee clan's Grand Elder. Very well, wait for me. I will be back. Third young master Long said with a trace of anger in his voice. He snorted and turned to leave. Just as Li Tian-he was about to stop him, Li Ming Xian quickly stopped him. Grand Elder, we are in trouble. Third Elder wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and sighed. What trouble? Li Tian-he just came out of seclusion and did not understand the situation. First Elder, it's like this. Li Mingxin explained everything that had happened to Li Tianhe. Li Tianhe frowned as he listened. He immediately understood that the Li family had caused a huge disaster. If things went wrong, they might even be in danger of being exterminated. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 529. It seems like the Li family is in trouble. In the courtyard, Chu Mu, who was sitting in a pavilion, opened his eyes and said to himself. He then closed his eyes again to comprehend the sword intent. Whether the Li family was in trouble or not didn't make much of a difference to Chu Mu. If there was no trouble, he would stay here for a while. If there was trouble, he would help solve it. If there was trouble that he couldn't solve, he would just ignore it and try to preserve some of the Li family's bloodline. This was equivalent to repaying Li Daoyuan for giving him the meteor sword energy. At this moment, the Li family was cleaning up the ruins of the hall. It had to be rebuilt, which would cost a lot of money. The head of the Li family and the elders were discussing how to get through this difficult time. The Long family's power was undeniable. Even the Li family from 1,000 years ago was not much weaker than the Long family. The current Li family was not worth mentioning at all. The third young master of the Long family had always had a bad reputation in the Jinsha County. His strength was not weak either, so he was valued by the Long family. As a result, the Li family was in danger and could be exterminated. Oh right, head elder, why did you suddenly come out? The second elder asked other questions since the discussion was fruitless. I didn't have a suitable martial art, so I couldn't condense sword energy into sword energy. That's why I came out. I didn't expect to encounter something like this. Sigh, the Li family is really full of troubles. Li Tianhe's face was gloomy. Originally, he had planned to find a suitable martial art to condense the sword origin and break through to the origin realm. He did not expect to encounter something like this the moment he came out. He had no choice but to use his sword qi. Now, even if he found a suitable martial art, he would not be able to break through unless he had a 9 transformation pill. A suitable martial art had to be at least an Earth-level martial art. The Li family didn't even have an Earth-level upper-level martial art. Li Mingxin and the others heard this and became depressed. The only person in the family who could reach the origin realm in a short period of time, the head elder, had lost his chance. Was the Li family destined to disappear? No, we still have a chance. Maybe. Li Mingxin seemed to have thought of something as his eyes lit up. When the other elders saw Li Mingxin's expression, they looked at each other. Then, they thought of something and smiled. At this moment, the sound of footsteps came from outside. From now on, the Li family will no longer exist in Jinsha County. A cold voice rang out, causing the expressions of Li Mingxin and the others to change drastically. They all turned their heads to look and saw 3 figures walking over. 2 of them were very familiar. Third Young Master Long and Sword Guard Long Jiu. In addition, there was also a black-robed old man. This old man looked to be in his 50s or 60s. His face was skinny and full of wrinkles, but his eyes were very black. Anyone who was stared at by him would feel a chill from the bottom of their heart and their whole body would involuntarily tremble. The black-robed elder was expressionless. With his hands behind his back, he followed behind Third Young Master Long. He did not put the Li family in his eyes at all. Third Young Master, we are willing to pay 10,000 top-level spirit stones as compensation. We hope that Third Young Master won't be so magnanimous and won't argue with a small family like ours. Li Mingxin lowered his status and bowed humbly. As the head of the family, he had to consider the survival of the entire family. The Li family is indeed a small family. In my eyes, you are like ants, but you have angered me, Third Young Master Long said angrily. Third Young Master Long said angrily. Then his tone changed. You want to settle the matter peacefully, right? Fine, I'll give you a chance. Take out 100,000 top-grade spirit stones and kill yourself here. Then I'll let this matter go like a fart. Otherwise, the whole Li family will be wiped out. 100,000 top-level spirit stones. The lips of the Li family members trembled. Even if they sold all the Li family members, they would not be able to gather so many spirit stones. You want me to kill myself here? Li Tianhe's face was cold. Third Young Master wants 100,000 top-level spirit stones and an ant like you to kill yourself here. It is already very kind of him. If I attack, you will all become ghosts under my sword. The black-robed elder behind the Third Young Master suddenly took a step forward and spoke in a gloomy voice. His voice was like a fingernail scratching against glass, and it produced waves of incomparably ear-piercing screeches. Moreover, it gave off an enormous aura that was incomparably fierce as it charged towards the Li family members. This aura was too powerful, and the members of the Li family were unable to resist it. Their bodies swayed and their faces turned red. Then, they fell to the ground and spat out mouthfuls of blood. Their faces quickly turned pale, and a touch of gray appeared. After spitting out a mouthful of blood, Li Tianhe's body was on the verge of collapse. He looked at the black-robed elder in horror. His throat was extremely dry. Origin Realm. Origin Realm. It's good that you know. I have never liked to attack, but if I do, I will kill you. The black-robed elder said this cruel fact with a gloomy voice. It was as if he was announcing the death penalty of the Li family. At this moment, the head of the Li family was extremely uncomfortable. Under such circumstances, they had no way of notifying Chu Mu. Of course, they also had their own thoughts. Chu Mu was only one person, while the Long family was so powerful. Perhaps Chu Mu would not offend the powerful Long family for the sake of a small family like the Li family. That would not be a wise decision. Kill them all. Third young master Long waved his hand as if he was going to kill a few chickens and ducks. He did not care about the lives of the Li family members at all. Don't blame me for being ruthless. You can only blame yourselves for being blind and daring to offend third young master. The black-robed elder sneered. He did not draw his sword. Instead, he stretched out his left hand and put his index finger and middle finger together. A wisp of sword energy condensed. It was extremely sharp. Then I will start with you. The black-robed elder stared at Li Tianhe and pointed his finger. The sword energy pierced through the air and shot towards Li Tianhe. The sword energy of an astral realm swordsman was extremely powerful. Even if Li Tianhe was infinitely close to the astral realm, there was still a huge gap between him and the astral realm. Facing this sword energy, he felt as if he could not dodge it no matter what. In the next moment, his head would be pierced and he would die. No, I can't die. Li Tianhe roared and drew his sword. Sword chi surged out of his body and condensed into a sword. It was his strongest sword technique. The final song was as bright as a falling star. Child's play. The black-robed elder showed a disdainful smile. In his opinion, Li Tianhe was just struggling in vain. Sure enough, his extremely condensed sword energy with 50% sword intent immediately broke Li Tianhe's strongest sword attack. Even the supreme grade sword in Li Tianhe's hand was shattered into pieces. Then, the sword energy shot towards Li Tianhe's forehead and was about to pierce it. It seemed that Li Tianhe was about to die under this terrifying sword energy. Suddenly, with a sigh, a sword radiance seemed to have come from the sky. It descended at an unparalleled speed and hit the sword energy. Both were instantly shattered. Who is it? Who dares to disturb me? The black-robed elder was enraged. He frowned and a terrifying killing intent swept out. It was as if there were mountains of corpses and seas of blood floating around him. This was a powerful astral realm swordsman who had walked through countless killings. His anger caused the Li family members to vomit blood again. The weaker ones directly fainted. Li Tianhe, who was lucky enough to survive, quickly retreated. His face was extremely pale. Li Mingxin and the rest knew that it was Master Chu who had helped the first elder survive. You're so old, yet you're still so hot-tempered. Be careful not to die. A faint voice sounded. The first word seemed to have come from the horizon, while the last word sounded like it was right beside their ears. In front of everyone's eyes, a figure in a white robe appeared. Where did this little brat come from? The black-robed elder said angrily. Then, he was startled. He carefully looked at Chu Mu and laughed. So it's a brat who has just reached the astral realm. Instead of cultivating properly, you actually dare to come out and cause trouble. You really don't know what death is. The elder was not wrong. Astral realm swordsmen who had just reached the astral realm would not casually appear in the outside world. They would usually integrate everything they had learned to get rid of the impurities and keep the essences so that their strength could match the astral realm. This would usually take a long time, perhaps a year or 3 to 5 years. The black-robed elder could tell that Chu Mu had just reached the astral realm less than a year ago. If he dared to appear in the outside world, he was either an idiot or overconfident. Obviously, in his eyes, Chu Mu was someone who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. He was the type who thought that he could do whatever he wanted just because he had some talent. On the other hand, third young master Long revealed a jealous expression. Chu Mu looked to be about the same age as him, but he was already an astral realm swordsman. Even if he had just entered the astral realm, he was still countless times stronger than him. This was something that he, who had always prided himself on as a genius, could not accept. The Li family is under my protection. If you take out 100,000 supreme-grade spiritual stones as compensation, then everything will end here, Chu Mu said indifferently. He did not put the black-robed elder in his eyes at all, even though the elder was at the initial stage of the astral realm. The Li family members almost fainted from shock. Chu Mu actually asked for 100,000 supreme-grade spiritual stones as compensation. They did not dare to accept it at all. Moreover, they had clearly heard that Chu Mu was only at the initial stage of the astral realm. He was the kind of swordsman who had just reached the initial stage of the astral realm and had not fully grasped his strength. As for the black-robed elder, he was obviously a powerful swordsman who had reached the astral realm many years ago. From this point alone, it was clear who was stronger and who was weaker. Kikik, Jr., your words are the biggest joke this old man has ever heard. For the sake of these words, this old man has decided to leave you with an intact corpse. The black-robed old man laughed sinisterly. He appeared to be in a very cheerful mood. You, kneel down before me and swear to be loyal to me from now on. If you become my dog, I can let you go. Third young Master Long took advantage of the black-robed elder's presence, and was jealous that Chu Mu's talent was higher than his. In the end, he could not help but take a step forward, pointing at Chu Mu and yelling. Since Third Young Master has said so, Junior, do as Third Young Master says. The black-robed elder laughed evilly. Don't try to resist, or else I'll let you know the taste of death. It doesn't matter if you have a powerful backer behind you. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 530. Chu Mu did not even look at Third Young Master Long's taunt. In his eyes, Third Young Master Long was just an arrogant person with a bit of talent. In the central main sword domain, his level of talent was nothing at all. As for that old man in the black robe, Chu Mu had more or less figured out his attack power from the sword yuan. He knew that this old man in the black robe, who was at the initial stage of the origin realm, was no match for him. The reason why he was silent was because he was thinking, but in the eyes of others, he looked like he was afraid. Kneel down before me now, and I will spare your life. I will also be magnanimous and let the Li family go this time. The more Third Young Master Long spoke, the more excited he got. He seemed to think that with the presence of the old man in the black robe, he would have a powerful backer. Master Chu, this is our Li family's matter. Master Chu, you don't have to do anything to avoid being implicated. Although Li Mingxin really hoped that Chu Mu could suppress the Third Young Master Long and protect the Li family, he also knew that with just Chu Mu, who was only at the initial stage of the origin realm, it was impossible for him to go against the Long family. That's right, Master Chu. The heavens have destined our Li clan to be exterminated. An elder's face was full of loneliness as he lamented. Chu Mu did not care about the Li family. When he agreed to Li Deyuan's request, it was destined that there would be a grudge between him and the Li family. Although he had said that he could ignore it if he couldn't handle it, now that Chu Mu was here, and the other party had directly asked for Chu Mu to kneel down and submit to him, a mere Chi-Hai sword artist threatening an origin realm warrior like this was an insult to his dignity. It was a reckless provocation. If Chu Mu just ignored it, then he would lose face. Chu Mu did not care about the so-called problem of face, but he could not tolerate an ant jumping around arrogantly in front of him, even provoking him many times. Chu Mu glanced at them and said lightly, "Kneel down and apologize. Take out 1,000,000 top-grade spiritual stones as compensation and swear that you will not cause any trouble for the Li family in the future. Then, I will let you leave alive." All of a sudden, everyone's faces were filled with astonishment. They were all frightened by Chu Mu's words. "Junior, this old man rarely has the chance to laugh so heartily." The black-robed old man laughed as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. "Soon, you won't be able to laugh anymore." Chu Mu smiled and said as he slowly pulled out the desolate sky sword. As the sword was pulled out inch by inch, Chu Mu's body emitted a strong sword aura. It was extremely sharp, as if it was piercing through the clouds, piercing through the void and cutting everything in its way. Other than the black-robed old man, the others all felt as if their bodies were in a sea of sword chi. Their naked bodies were constantly being sliced by the sword chi. Waves of intense stabbing pain swept through their bodies. It was extremely uncomfortable, as if they were suffering from the pain of being dismembered. Even Li Tianhe felt extremely uncomfortable. Good sword, Junior, this old man wants this sword. The black-robed old man stared at the eight-sided heavenly desolate sword that Chu Mu had already pulled out. Instantly, his eyes lit up and he bluntly asked for Chu Mu's top-tier royal rank sword. At that moment, the black-robed old man made a grabbing motion. Countless strands of sword chi condensed on his fingers and gushed out, forming a palm of sword chi. It was extremely sharp and fast, and Chu Mu felt as if he could not dodge it. It was as if the sword in his hand was about to be taken away. With a chuckle, Chu Mu flipped his wrist and the desolate sky sword swept up a cold sword light. It slashed horizontally, directly cutting off the 5 fingers of the palm of sword chi. The sword pierced forward as if it was formed by nature. It didn't seem fast, but it was actually as fast as lightning. The black-robed old man felt as if he could not dodge it. His face suddenly changed and his pupils constricted. A sword appeared in his hand. He raised it and slashed down. The sword light tore through the air, as if it was going to cut the sky open. Halfway through the slash, the black-robed old man felt a sharp pain in his wrist. Before he could react, a cold light appeared before his eyes. It was like a line between the sky and the water. The slash was too fast, and there was no way to dodge it. The black-robed old man felt a sharp pain in his neck, as if something wet was flowing down. Following that, his vision quickly turned dark. An old man's head flew up. Blood spurted out and rolled on the ground. Everyone fell into a daze. One slash, just one slash, without using any sword skills, had killed an initial stage Origin Realm swordsman. Instant kill. This scene was too unbelievable. It was as if the black-robed old man, who was at initial stage Origin Realm, was an ant that could be casually killed with a finger. You actually killed. Third young Master Long finally reacted and pointed at Chu Mu. His face was full of panic and shock as he continuously retreated. His fingers were constantly trembling and sweat was rolling down his forehead as he screamed in shock. "Young Master, run!" Long Jiu roared. He pulled out his sword and rushed towards Chu Mu. He wanted to use his life to buy a chance for third young Master Long to escape. Chu Mu took a step forward and passed by Long Jiu. He appeared in front of third young Master Long and placed his sword on third young Master Long's throat. Long Jiu took a few steps forward and fell down. Blood flowed out from his neck and dyed the ground red. No one saw what happened at that moment. Long Jiu, a swordsman in the 8th transformation realm, died just like that. Don't kill me. Third young Master Long's voice was filled with tears. He begged bitterly, as if he was extremely afraid of death. It was the complete opposite of his previous arrogance. "I have spiritual stones. I can give you a lot of spiritual stones. As long as you don't kill me," however, Chu Mu only looked at third young Master Long, causing third young Master Long to feel immense pressure. "It's fine if I don't kill you." According to Chu Mu's habits, he should have stabbed out with his sword and killed without mercy. However, he wasn't alone right now. He had to consider the Li family, so he had no choice but to use other methods. However, you must swear in the name of the sword path that from now on, you will not use any method, path, or method to deal with the Li family. Otherwise, you will suffer the pain of your soul shattering and be consigned to eternal damnation. What? Everyone's face changed. As a swordsman, even those who were not ambitious, they knew very well what it meant to swear in the name of swordsmanship. Once they went against it, they would suffer the backlash of the oath. They would truly be doomed. No one was willing to bear that kind of consequence. "I don't swear," third young Master Long said with a trembling voice. He knew very well that once he swore, he would not be able to deal with the Li family. He would not be able to resolve the hatred in his heart. He prided himself as a genius and wanted to make a name for himself in swordsmanship. How could he dare to swear in the name of swordsmanship? "If that's the case, then you can die," Chu Mu said indifferently. He pushed his sword forward slightly, and the incomparably sharp tip of the sword instantly pierced through the skin on third young Master Long's throat. "Wait, I swear!" third young Master Long hurriedly roared. He swore that he had never spoken so fast before. If he was a little slower, his throat would be pierced and he would die without a doubt. "Very good." Chu Mu nodded and withdrew his sword. Third young Master Long knew that he could not escape from Chu Mu's sword. He began to swear in the name of swordsmanship. When he finished swearing, there was a force added to third young Master Long's body, representing that the oath was valid. After third young Master Long finished swearing, he regained his calmness. He looked at Chu Mu and said with some resentment, "I've finished swearing. Can I go now?" "Before you leave, remove the ownership of your spatial bracelet and give it to me as compensation to the Li family," Chu Mu said, not caring about the resentment in third young Master Long's eyes. Third young Master Long was also very straightforward at this time. He directly removed the ownership and handed the top-grade spatial bracelet in his hand to Chu Mu. He looked at Chu Mu and said with anger and resentment, "I've already sworn that I won't take revenge on the Li family in any way. Even the Long family won't make a move against the Li family. However, in the oath, it didn't include you. Just you wait, I will definitely come to find you again. No matter what price I have to pay, I will definitely make you kneel in front of me, humiliate you, and then kill you to take revenge for today. If you are afraid and go back on your word, you can draw your sword now and kill me. You can go. If you want to take revenge on me, don't let this kind of trash come." Chu Mu smiled and said. Third young Master Long stared at Chu Mu hatefully as if he wanted to imprint Chu Mu in his heart. Then he turned and left. Chu Mu threw the top-grade spatial bracelet to Li Mingxin, the head of the Li family. "This is the compensation he gave you. I don't know what's inside. Check it yourself. In addition, the spatial bracelet of the sword guard is also yours." After saying that, Chu Mu took the spatial bracelet of the black-robed old man and disappeared in a flash. If it weren't for the two corpses on the ground, no one would believe that an earthquake-like event had just happened here. After Chu Mu left, only a group of Li family members were left. Some of them had just woken up from their coma and only felt pain all over their bodies. They didn't understand what had happened at all. Li Mingxin, the elders, and the deacons were all dumbfounded. They were still immersed in shock and couldn't extricate themselves. After a while, they finally woke up. They looked at each other and saw the extreme shock in each other's eyes. They felt like they were in a dream. Unbelievable. This is unbelievable. Li Tianhe looked like he had lost his soul. He muttered to himself, "An initial stage origin realm cultivator could kill an initial stage origin realm swordsman so easily. He didn't even use any sword techniques. Genius, an absolute genius." At this moment, Li Mingxin had also dripped blood on the two spatial bracelets to claim ownership. He sent his mind into the two bracelets and carefully checked them. After a while, Li Mingxin's body started to tremble. His face was filled with excitement and his face was flushed. "Great, this is great!" He couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Ha ha ha ha, with these spiritual stones and treasures, the overall strength of the Li family can be increased a little, making the family even stronger. As long as we use them wisely, we can form an effective cycle and increase the strength of the family step by step. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation."